Welcome back, and thank you for being punctual. It's 1 o'clock. We're going to reconvene. And Ms. Cicchetti, oh no, is it Ms. Taylor now?
We're going to convene the board work group for the
We're not
veterans
on-
exemption, disabled.
Oh, I guess I'm off. I was looking at item,
16. Well, I think there was a time certain for your speakers today for the board
oh,
work group.
okay, all right. I'll
So
let you go.
We'll start with the work group, then we'll go back to the meeting.
Sounds good.
All right. So if you could just confirm that we are convening the board work group for veterans exemption, disabled veterans exemption, and homeowners exemption at 1 o'clock. And our first item is greetings and introductory remarks from Mr. Chairman Vasquez and Ms. Vice Chair Lieber.
Okay, so I'm hearing some back noise. What's that coming from?
They're on Teams. There's a few people. I
Oh.
believe, some of our upcoming speakers are in the Teams environment.
Got it. Well, welcome back, everyone. We are now convening the Veterans, Disabled Veterans, and Homeowners Exemption Work Group. Ms. Taylor, will you announce the speakers? You want to announce the speakers now?
Certainly. The speakers that are online right now are for item 2. So unless there's any introductory remarks, I can move on to item 2.
Yes, once you do that,
All
then
right.
we'll come back.
Great. Item 2, overview of guidance on the application of a veterans organization exemption for buildings, property owned by veterans organization, use issues. Our speakers today, we'll start with the BoE overview of exemptions, responsibilities, federal statutory updates, and issues regarding use. And our speakers are Yvette Stowers, Executive Director, Board of Equalization, Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel, Board of Equalization, and David Young, Deputy Director, Property Tax Department, Board of Equalization.
Welcome, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good
Chairman
afternoon.
Vasquez, honorable members, I'm Yvette Stowers, Executive Director. I would like to first thank the board for their leadership in identifying and exploring ways to address current challenges within the veterans, disabled veterans, and homeowners exemption. At last month's meeting, the board work group heard speakers on many issues related to these exemptions. During the discussion, a comment was made regarding the application of the Veterans Organization exemption, prompting questions on the specifics of this exemption. As a result, today's work group focused on the Veterans Organization exemption. To assist with the discussion, Mr. David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department, is going to provide you with an overview of the Veterans Organization exemption. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Yvette. Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. For the record, my name is David Young. I'm the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. With the board's okay, I see we have a very robust calendar for today, but I would like to maybe just go back and do a quick recap of the veterans, disabled veterans, and homeowners exemption, and I will concentrate on the veterans organizational exemptions. I promise my update will be high level, and it should be about 3 minutes. So with your okay, I'll go ahead and start. So with a quick overview of the veterans exemption. Right now, there's an exemption under Revenue and Taxation Code 205 that basically exempts $4,000 worth of taxable property from any veterans. So if you're a veteran, you're eligible for that exemption. There are a couple limitations there. For you to get that exemption, you actually can't own property that is worth more than $5,000. And if you're a married veteran, that limit goes up to $10,000. So if you own limited property, both real and personal property in California, then you can exempt up to $4,000 worth of your property. The other one that is a little bit more substantial is the one for the disabled veterans.
Just a question of clarification.
Of course.
Would that apply to a mobile home?
It would apply to mobile home.
Yeah.
It would apply to mobile home. as long as it's taxable as real property and not a licensed mobile home, it would apply to certain watercrafts and whatnot, so
Thank
it's
you.
all types of properties. Yes. $4,000 has been the amount for a very long time. It has not seen any increase in quite a while. It is a relatively small amount, so small that we have not had many in the recent years that have applied for it, because there are other more advantageous exemptions that that are available to veterans. So it is a little bit low. Right now, my guess is, because there's so little of those, I would guess there's probably only a couple dozen left in California at that level.
What did I have to do to get it up to 100,000?
Well, the veterans exemption is actually embedded in the California Constitution, so it would require a constitutional amendment in order to change the limit on that. There are other exemptions available to veterans. There is a disabled veterans exemption, so that comes actually in two parts. The first one is known as the $100,000 exemption. So if you're a disabled veteran, you have to be rated at 100% disability, and you can actually get an exemption for up to $100,000 of your property. That's embedded in Revenue Taxation Code 205.5. That $100,000 is actually indexed for inflation on a yearly basis.
When did that start, the 100,000?
The veterans exemption, the disabled veterans exemption has been around for almost over 30 years, so I don't have the exact date.
Well, the 100,000 and the 4,000 started at the same time?
No, they did not. The veterans exemption was in law well before the disabled veterans. The basic $100,000 exemption, over the many years of factoring of increases due to inflation, right now you can exempt up to $169,769 of taxable property as of 2024. And in the state of California, for the last year we had reported numbers on that is for fiscal year 2022-23, we had over 63,000 of that exemption, and it's taken off over $8.8 billion off of the taxable, off the rolls of the 58
These are only
counties.
disabled people, though.
These are only disabled, so in order to qualify, you do have to be rated at 100% disability. So that, under 205.5, there's actually one other disabled veterans exemption. It's an offshoot of that, and there's a special one for if you qualify as low income. So the low income one is known as the $150,000 exemption. So they raise the limit if you meet certain income qualifications. They have the same factoring provisions in there. So so factored up for this coming 2024 lien date, the amount that you can actually exempt is $254,656. So it's over $250,000 if you're disabled.
Do you have any feel for how other states are treating veterans?
Yeah, actually I do. So let me just wrap up the low income one, and then I'll jump back and discuss a little bit about that. So there's a little over 4,800 of those low income veterans exemption, and it takes off just a little bit over $1 billion off of the rolls. So together, almost 68,000 of the disabled veterans exemption, and getting really close to about $10 billion taken off the roll. So the last exemption that's available to veterans is if you own more property than the $5,000 limit for the veterans, but you're not disabled, you can take advantage of just the regular homeowner's exemption. The homeowner's exemption is available to anybody that owns a property if it's your primary residence. You can take a homeowner's exemption on that, it's $7,000. There is over 4.7 million of those homeowners exemptions in California, and that takes off over $33.3 billion off the taxable value off of the rolls. So if I may come back to your question,
I thought the 7,000 was anybody. You're saying?
that is correct. So the $7,000 is just a homeowner's exemption. It's available to anybody, including veterans.
Yeah.
So if you actually own a home, chances are in California, it'd be worth more than $5,000. And if you're married, more than $10,000.
And isn't that a rather silly amount, given the economy?
It's when it was implemented, it was enough to exempt a decent portion of your taxable value. It no longer reflects that.
100 years ago.
It's been a little bit. So just to go back, just to fill in a little bit, how do other states treat the veterans exemptions? Almost all states have some provision for a veterans exemption. They range all the way from basically a tax refund of taxes paid, all the way to a full exemption of your property. So it runs the whole gamut. The most generous states offer a full exemption on a primary home owned by veterans, and one of them actually includes up to 40 acres of land. So we are somewhere in the middle. And then my last area I wanted to cover was the veterans organization exemption. So that's, since the early 70s, that has been in statute. It's actually in Revenue and Taxation Code 215.1 that exempts property owned by a veterans organization and used for one of their purposes. There is a two-step method that you have to basically go through in order to get that exemption. Just like the regular welfare exemption, you actually have to come to the board and get an OCC, or an organizational clearance certificate. We take a look at that organization's formative documents to make sure the organization fits within the parameter of what's required. Once they get an OCC from us, their next step is to actually apply for that specific property at the county assessor in which the property is located. So if they get an OCC from us, they own something in Sacramento, they wouldn't go to Sacramento County assessors and say, I want to get an exemption for this specific piece of property.
What does the TEEF stand for in OTC?
I'm sorry, it's OCC, it's Organizational Clearance Certificate. It is a certification we give to organizations that meet the requirements as an organization that they are
You
organized.
said OTC, like in Thomas.
Oh, I'm sorry, if I said it, I misspoke. It's OCC,
OCC.
correct.
So in simple terms, members, the Board of Equalization is charged with making sure that the organization qualifies. And then as Mr. Young stated, it's a two-part process. The second part's done by the assessors, and the assessors take a look at the actual use and determine if the use is appropriate for an exemption.
Absolutely, that's correct. So it is a shared responsibility. We co-administer that with the county assessors. So if the organization is denied an OCC, the recourse is to basically appeal it before the board, before you, but there is no appeal process for the denial of the exemption for a specific property by the assessor. That would have to be basically be brought before the Superior Court for their decision. So
Mr. Young, I don't recall anybody coming before us. Has that happened?
we do check, and we have revoked some. Most of them are revoked because they, one, no longer qualify or no longer own that property. But we have not had one before the board for an appeal process in quite a while. So,
Like 50 years or 5 years?
I don't, it's at least been more, it's been more than 5 years. So if they no longer qualify, we work with them extensively. We reach out to them, we ask, do you still need this? Is this something that is, you wish to continue? Why did you not file? We work with them, and when and if we can, we will work with them to basically renew their status.
Generally speaking, if there are any kind of questions whatsoever, Mr. Young's staff will involve legal, and we will get involved and work with the organization. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, Member Schaefer, we all agree that we give them every opportunity to show us that, they are entitled to it, and at the end of the day, if they're not entitled to it, they understand that, which is probably why there hasn't been an appeal. I am not aware of an appeal in the last at least 10 years, if not more.
So to cover what's required in order to get this organization for a veterans organization. So there's requirements embedded in the Revenue Taxation Code 215.1 and also 214. So under the 215.1, the requirement is that the veterans organization must actually be chartered by the U.S. Congress. So there is a requirement that they actually be chartered through Congress. There's other general, they also, in that provision, they reference that not only do you have to meet 215.1, but you actually have to meet the requirements in 214, which is the general welfare exemption, A through 7. And one of them, the most broad, is the property must be used exclusively for a charitable purpose. So that's the real broad one. It has to be for a charitable purpose. And then there's an actually 214A5, actually there is an actual provision that says what it can't be used for. So that provision says the property may not be used for fraternal lodge or social club purposes, with an exception. That exception is when that use is clearly incidental to a qualified veterans organization's charitable purpose. So if you can't use it for a lodge, you can't use it for a social club. But if it's something used for a true charitable purpose, but you use it incidentally for that, then then perhaps you can get it in. So with that, there's a whole lot of, it's not truly prescriptive, it's not super clear. There are some court cases that through the course of this exemption that has opined on certain things. And we've taken all that and we've actually have some guidance in our handbook. Assessor's Handbook 267 has some general guidance on what is basically allowed in a veteran organizational exemption. And it could be basically summarized in that the property must be used in a manner that is at least incidental to and reasonably necessary for fulfilling a purpose that benefits the general public, and that charitable purpose does not include fraternal lodge or social activities. So that's our general guidance. What do we gave a couple of specific examples. One of the examples that we gave, what is a qualified use? We said that office areas used for counseling veterans and for storing veterans' records are considered exclusively used for a charitable purpose and qualifying for the exemption. In general, what we said do not qualify is meeting halls and areas found on most veterans organizational properties are not considered to be used exclusively for charitable purposes because they are primarily for fraternal, lodge, or social club purposes. So that's what we said in general. But however, bear in mind too that we've also said that should the meeting hall be used, for example, primarily for educational financial seminars for veterans and only occasionally used for activities, the hall should qualify for the exemption. So you have to bear in mind that this is actually a use exemption. It is not a type of property exemption. It all depends on how the property is being used. So conceivably, although theoretically it could happen, two similar properties, veterans halls, owned by the same organization in the same county, one may get an exemption and one may not. It all depends on how it's being used. If one is being used mainly as a lodge or a social club meeting place, it probably wouldn't qualify. The other one, identical, maybe not too far away. The primary use of that is for counseling, veteran services and whatnot, and only occasionally used as a hall, that may qualify. So it's very much a use exemption and not a property type. So that's kind of where we're at in what we have so far for guidance on the issue. Now, bear in mind that there has been many legislative attempts in order to make specific that a lodge use, social club use, is actually a qualifying use. There has been legislation going all the way back to 2002, 2002, and up to as recently as 2019, that basically would have provided a statutory provision that says that type of use is within the scope of the veterans organization. None of them have made it through the full legislative process. That concludes my presentation.
And if I can add on just from a legal standpoint, there's been a lot of court cases involving the Veterans Organization exemption. So not all of them completely consistent, as court cases may sometimes find themselves being not consistent. But generally speaking, there's a lot of guidance out there that we try to capture in our guidance and handbooks and documents, and also in our legal opinions. We occasionally do get asked about a legal opinion in this area. But it's really challenging because it is kind of away from our jurisdiction, as we kind of started out by saying. Our jurisdiction is identifying the organization and certifying the organization. As far as the use, that's usually, for lack of a better term, a fight that the assessor or the county gets into with the actual organizations in many of these court cases that I'm referring to.
Through the chair, if I could just,
I was just wanting to double check with Ms. Taylor real quick. I know we have people on the line. Are there time sensitivities on these things, or do we have a little window, or do we still have some flexibility here?
Yeah, we still have some flexibility.
Okay. Go ahead, Member
great,
Gaines.
thank you. So it sounds like, again, you would need legislation to provide more clarity
Yeah.
on how expansive the exemption is. Social, for instance, social use of veterans. Is that what you're speaking of specifically, or are you speaking of other events that are unrelated to veterans that may occur on the premises?
I mean, generally speaking, the cases have been fairly narrow and fairly strict for the most part. Every now and then you'll find a little bit more flexibility. But yes. But what happens is typically, as Mr. Young suggested, social, fraternal, those kind of activities are clearly, they're specifically said they're not included, right? So a lot of veterans organization facilities have bar areas, if you will. Bars have been pretty clearly stated as, no, that's for social purposes, so.
Okay. I've been to like a retirement event for a general who was retiring.
Right.
So would that be an exemption? Would that be?
That kind
It
of
was
gets
like
close.
a dinner, awards dinner sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
it
mean,
gets-
it depends on how it's packaged, I mean, honestly, because what the facts they're gonna look at is this a social activity? Because if it's a social activity, it's not entitled to, the exemption. Now, that being said, it's not one event, right?
Right.
One event could be incidental, so if they have one general retiring that they throw a party for every,
Okay.
10 years, that's probably an
Okay.
incidental use, right?
And then I've gone to like a pancake breakfast, I've gone to several of those, and is that social? I mean, I guess it's social,
So-
but
Yeah, so, I mean, there is room for interpretation, but the surest method to get clear-cut, parameters on this is through legislation. There has been other legislations on this. There was provision passed a couple years back that actually said that certain bingo functions are within the parameters, and that's in there. So they have gone that route. They've been successful in some and not in others.
okay. I think they charged for the breakfast that I went to, and
Yeah. So once again, that comes down to, is it truly incidental, as Mr.
Yeah.
Nanjo has said? If you do it once in a while, it could be incidental. But if you hold an annual event, that annual event is regular, even though it's once a year, that may not be incidental.
Yeah,
So
okay.
a lot of it is up to assessors to discern upon
It's
the
not
facts
clear.
of the case, yeah.
unless you carry legislation and clarify.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I think a couple points to keep in mind is because of these details, it's very case by case, which is why rather than the BoE as an organization trying to create guidelines, it's really the assessors to kind of know what's going on in their county and what's acceptable and what's considered incidental and what have you. The other point to remember is, as Mr. Young started at the very front end of this, even as Member Schaefer noted, some of these exemptions are fairly low amounts of money. The amount of money that in total gets taken off the tax rolls is quite significant. We're talking billions of dollars, right? So consequently, there is some sensitivity to expanding these exemptions to the point where, then you have a shortfall that you need to make up on the other end. So it's always kind of a balancing act from that standpoint.
But just to clarify, so the billions of dollars of exemptions have to do with housing though, versus
Correct.
veterans halls.
Right.
Yeah,
Is that
the
correct?
numbers I
Okay.
gave, the numbers I gave you were for the individual veterans and what they qualify
Yes,
for,
okay.
not for the organization.
Very good, thank you.
It's still the same concept. These
Yeah.
are, to the extent that you're giving exemptions, it's money off the county rolls.
Yes,
So,
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
thank you.
We're good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're good.
Thank you.
Then you know what, Ms. Taylor, I misspoke here. I guess I should open up with some remarks, and I was going to turn to my vice chair and the members as well, since we do have a little, I was thinking that we were holding these people up, waiting
I
to
think
speak.
we're okay.
So first of all, thank you for your presentations. And kind of going back a little bit, as we discussed at our July 25th meeting, veterans and their organizations have faced some challenges in qualifying for exemptions that board and assessors jointly administer. We learned that many disabled veterans are unaware of them or challenged by the complexity of the forms and eligibility. Income levels, surviving spouses. In addition, we heard that some veterans organizations have challenged qualifying their property for exemptions, even though they are chartered in Congress. Regarding homeowners, we learned that many family members who inherit a home are unaware of the new mandate under Prop 19 to claim the homeowner's exemption within 1 year of the transfer. Today, this work group will hear testimony from those who are most impacted by these issues and will receive the input and expertise from the assessors who are at the forefront and can help recommend the best options. And with that, let me turn it to my co-chair, Ms. Lieber, and see what opening remarks she might have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Well, I know that for each of the board members, it's been really a learning experience to look at what California provides, and especially in contrast to where some other states are in terms of their policy landscape. And I think that this is going to be a work group that will keep developing, and there's the possibility of requesting legislation on any of these topics. And I'm still going through looking at what has been the fate of the previous legislation. But I think that there's a lot more to do. And at the outset of this process, I kind of, you hear the terms thrown around. There's this veterans exemption, that veterans tax credit, whatever. But as we've learned by going through the process, sometimes it's so difficult to really access these things that it ends up not being worth it. And in particular for our veterans who are seniors, and some of the complications that are dependent on when an individual served and what their status is. So we've had some really good information surface so far, and I'm looking forward to continuing that process. I do think that the BoE has a role to play, and as we go through this exercise, really being able to highlight some of the areas that we think that it would be fortuitous to have legislation in, and to move forward on that basis. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And it sounds like there's a consensus, especially after hearing from Mr. Nanjo and Mr. Young, that we may want to look at some possible legislation or something we could do to give these folks a little bit more latitude. But I know we have some folks that are prepared to testify today, so let's hear their comments, because there might be some other issues that we're not even aware of. And with that, Ms. Taylor, if I can get you to introduce, I guess, sub-item B
Yes,
on the
Ron.
county assessor's perspective on the Veterans Organization's exemption and the speakers.
Yes. Our speakers for item 2B, County Assessor's Perspective, is Honorable Christina Nguyen, President-elect, California Assessors Association, and Sacramento County Assessor.
Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Vasquez and Vice Chair Lieber, for inviting CAA to participate in this work group meeting. I am Christina Nguyen, Sacramento County Assessor and CAA President-elect. I am filling in for President Lee, who is not able to be here today. So in speaking on behalf of county assessors, of course, it is always our goal to comply with the legal regulations and recommended BoE guidelines. As mentioned by BoE staff, assessors are responsible for confirming that the use of the property meets the requirements. In some cases, a portion of the property may qualify, not the full amount, but a portion, and a determination of that percentage is made. This can be challenging and often requires field inspections and well-trained staff. Determination is therefore made on a case-by-case basis. Speaking for Sacramento County, we have 4 of these properties in Sacramento County, and all 4 are 100% exempt because they are used only for office space and they have no meeting hall or bar space. I was thinking that if there is a concern about uniformity, the assessment survey process could be used to audit these assessments in the future if the board deems, the board staff deems that would be necessary, and I'm sure assessors would be open to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Assessor Nguyen. And based on your testimony, it seems that one challenge of administering this exemption is obtaining the correct information from these veteran organizations about their specific uses. Do you think an improvement, so I'm wondering, do you think the improvement in that claim form would help, I guess?
Well, I think the claim form has been vetted out pretty closely over the years. We spend a lot of time making sure we can collect as much information as possible. The thing is, what happens sometimes is the form is filled out by someone who may not know all of the details, and they may not know how to answer some of the questions. Of course, we're always trying to help them, over the phone if they call in and have questions, but the field inspection is really important to verify. And what happens sometimes is we may not go out and inspect as often. We have a cyclical inspection schedule. We try to go out and take a look. But, it is sort of a combined, we are relying on them to fill the paperwork out correctly. We do trust that they're doing that, but at the same time, sometimes there are questions, things come up, and we have to go out and inspect, especially if you're looking at a percentage. If it's not going to be 100%, if it's not obvious it's 100%, it's really important to go out and inspect and make sure. So that's one thing that sometimes staffing levels may prolong the time between inspections. That can happen. Some counties may not have these properties. Some of the larger counties may have a lot of these properties. So that can vary as far as workload. But it is really important to make sure and, I guess, educate the applicant, if you have the opportunity to, about, what are these questions and how should they be answering?
Thank you. Let me turn to my co-chair, Ms. Lieber, and see if she might have a question for the assessor. When?
No, not yet.
Okay. Yeah, how about any other members? Any questions for the assessor when before we let her go? I think we're all good. Thank you. Ms.
Thank
Taylor,
you.
if you would announce the next speaker we have.
Yes, our next speaker is the Honorable James Rooney, Amador County Assessor.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
I was really hoping you wouldn't call on me. I thought I'd get by,
Well, you were
slip
so
under the-
good yesterday. We needed to bring you back for an encore.
Well, thank you. We have one of these properties in our county. And it does have a bar and a social area. And, we have to make some judgments. We're not really, I guess the biggest problem sometimes is making sure the forms are filled out correctly and that they're turned in timely. But yeah, I gotta tell you, when a veterans organization or an organization that's doing something for the public doesn't turn in their forms right and there's penalties, I just can't stand it. Because those are the people doing good in the community. But in a small county like ours, we have one. So in a sense, if we had a dozen of them or 16 of them, we'd say, hey, look, we have staff that's going to handle this. We have one person that works on it once a year, and we don't seem to be having trouble with it, and we don't seem to be getting written up for it. So for us, it's not actually going too bad. I'm kind of more interested in hearing how the larger counties or medium-sized counties are dealing with it, just so we can make sure we're dealing with it. And by the way, this is one of the things that the Board of Equalization is very important. Why it's very important. Because if we're not doing it quite correctly, or because we have a staff of 11, and one person does this it's a one-time thing a year, we kind of rely on the state board to be critical of us and say, hey, look, there's something you're not doing particularly right. And again, in a sense, it gets back to staffing like we talked yesterday. Something we didn't mention yesterday was I've heard staffing at the state board has been kind of hard because they're not pulling staff from the county assessors. I'm going to tell you right now, the smaller counties on something like this, when you have a small staff, we rely on the Board of Equalization quite a bit for advice. And somebody like Richard Moon, your legal staff has been very helpful, or even Mr. Young. Anyway, other than that, I don't have much to say.
No, I appreciate your comments. I was wondering if you Well, it sounds like for the most part, since I think you mentioned you only have really one, has that been an issue, the form, or is there something that maybe we can do at our end to help facilitate that?
No, right now, fortunately, the person who's been doing it's been doing it for about a dozen years. So I think we got this figured out. One of my big concerns is retirements. Somebody retires and unless they've documented a few things, they take it with us. Then we call the Board of Equalization. I'm looking at Jack Parath, a guest, at his, and that looks like it's their hall there at the American Legion Hall. Looks similar to like the one we have. And we go into a hall like that, and we take a few measurements, we do a few calculations. We say, look, a portion of this is a bar area or a recreation area that doesn't qualify. We make adjustments. We tell the American Legion, and they, I guess they rely on us to be right, and we're pretty conservative in our estimates too. So, but we're getting by okay. For a small county, it does matter. How long has your staff been in that's doing that? And when I say staff, the one person who handles it every year. Gosh, we need to do some, succession training. It's so important in a small county. So, anyway, if you have questions for me about small county stuff, I'll sure tell you, but ours is going relatively smoothly.
Sounds good. I don't know, we do have a question here from our Deputy Controller.
Thank you, Assessor. I appreciate you coming on back-to-back days to present before this board. I just had a really quick question. You mentioned that if the form is not filled out correctly, there's going to be some fines and fees levied. But before that happens, does the applicant have a chance to make revisions to the form, or is contacted that, hey, that this portion may be missing or blank and needs to be filled out?
Yeah, we will bend over backwards, contact them by phone or mail or email, and tell them, look, we're having a problem with the way the form's filled out. Please call us or come into the office. We make every attempt. The only really problem comes in is maybe if somebody at the administration of a American Legion maybe didn't turn it in on time, we wouldn't notice any mistakes if it wasn't received on time. And so we just, if we in any way can assist them, we will do it. Yeah, and if there's any way to avoid the penalties and tell them or tell somebody, hey, this needs to be corrected. Also, there's a time, there's a date on this, it needs to be turned in by. It generally works out pretty well. So we do our best to assist them in the process.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that due diligence. Thank you, Chairman.
I think we have another question here from Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you very much, Assessor Rooney. Appreciate it. And, we've been talking about maybe potential legislation that would look at clarifying exemptions for veterans halls. And do you think that would have much of an impact fiscally if that were liberalized with county assessors up and down the state?
Yeah, I pulled up, gosh darn it, I pulled up the assessment of our, of the post we have here. It's interesting. I'm going to be general, but it's about a $450,000 assessment. We're exempting about half of it, I guess. In a small county like us, when you think about it, let's say it's a $350,000 assessment. That's $3,500 of a tax bill. That's not going to make any difference here. It's just it's for us, it's not a big number. I don't see veterans halls as being that big of a deal money-wise. For one thing, I have everything electronic here. let me just check. I was just looking at something. Let me check something. Yeah, gosh, this thing, goes back to, oh my gosh, the 1990s, that they did some new construction. Come to think of it, I'm gonna find out when the base year value was, the original base year value. It's, I can find it too, right here too. There it is. Let me see, new, this goes back to 1975. Wow. And so, our land value on this thing is $41,000 for a commercial parcel. It seems to me these American Legion posts are very old assessments. Now that you think about it, how often do these things sell or transfer? So I would think that they would have low base year values. You could check with somebody like Christina in Sacramento. They're not very big values. I don't like to comment on revenue issues, because assessors, we try not to care about how much revenue something's bringing in, but rather, what is the value? Do we have it right? Period. And if it's good, big revenue, fine. If it's low revenue, that should not matter to us. But that being said, American Legion posts probably all have very old values on them, because they don't sell or transfer, especially the parent to child transfer. So anyway, I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
I don't think we have any other questions now. Thank you, Mr. Rooney, on
All right.
joining us again.
Well, thank you, and I hope to see you soon.
We will.
All right.
Ms. Taylor, who's our next speaker?
Our next speaker is the Honorable Jordan Mark, San Diego County Assessor, Recorder Clerk, but I don't know if they are on the Teams environment. Maybe we can see if they're in. All right. Then if not, we'll move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Antonio Castro, Principal Appraiser representing the Honorable Jeffrey Prang, Los Angeles County Assessor.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members, Assessors Wynn and Rudy. Thank you for inviting me and allowing me to speak on behalf of Assessor Prang. And just a quick minor correction, that would be Chief Appraiser Antonio Castro, just to get the record straight. Let's see here. Thank you again for allowing me. To my surprise, Los Angeles County, who's still considered a large county, has 0 veterans organizational exemptions. None. Over the past several years, we've had numerous claims filed, mailed in, but most of them did not have the OCCs, the organizational clearance certificates. I don't have the exact reasons why they did not, whether they did not qualify. I could name off 6 quick ones like AMVETS, American Legions, Veterans Organization, Veterans of Foreign Wars, but they did not have their OCCs, so it never went further than that. There was no inspection for usage because we just couldn't go any further, so that the claims were denied and they never came back. One organization apparently did apply. We did accept it. But after that year, they failed to file their annual claims. So they didn't follow through year after year. So it died there. They never sent one after 2016, which is a shame because they definitely would have qualified. And so that's what we have in LA County currently. And we do have staffing, ample staffing to handle it, but there's nothing to handle with regards to the veterans organizational exemptions. As far as veterans exemptions, it's my understanding, we have 0 of those as well, but it's my understanding you can't have both the veterans exemption and the homeowners exemption at the same time. You have to pick one or the other. And of course, they're going to pick the larger exemptions. That's 7,000. So that's the main reason why we don't have veterans exemptions in LA County. We have 0 of those. With regards to disabled veterans exemptions, we have over 5,000 of those. So that's not really an issue. whether that's a low or high number, I don't have an opinion on that at this point. But we do administer over 5,000 disabled veterans, and it's a mix of basic and low income as well. So that's basically the scenario in LA County.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. How does the assessor's office obtain the use of property owned by veterans organizations?
Well, it's when they mail the claims in. That's how we have it in a log. We record it. We have a database. That's where I got all the names and the years. We still have the information. They just never followed through with the OCC, and I don't know whether they actually went back to the Board of Equalization to follow up with that. But apparently, according to my staff, we've been told by some applicants that it takes too long, that it takes months and months to get that certificate. Now, I don't have any support or evidence to that effect, but that's what I've heard from staff who've spoken directly to applicants, that it just takes too long.
So they just opt out, I guess, at that point.
That's a possibility.
Is there any other questions from any of the members? I think, oh, yeah, our deputy controller has one for you.
Thank you, Mr. Castro, for your presentation and for being here before this body. You mentioned for the disabled veterans exemption, there's a mixed bag between basic and low income. Can you explain a little further what that entails?
Well, yes, as I think Director Young had mentioned, as far as the disabled, you have the low income exemption, and then you have the basic, which is the 100% disabled, the 100,000. So I don't have that breakdown currently to give you, but in total, disabled veterans exemptions, there's over 5,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing no other questions, I think we're good. Thank you for your time, Mr. Castro.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Taylor, who's our next one?
Our next item is 2C, our Veterans Organization exemption from the veterans' perspective. Our first speaker in this group is Jim Zenner, Director, Los Angeles County Department of Military and Veteran Affairs.
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez and board members, for allowing me to speak to you about this critical issue today. My name is Jim Zenner, and I am the Director of the Los Angeles County Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. In addition to advocating on behalf of our veterans and their families and promoting awareness of their contributions, our mission at the department involves counseling veterans, their dependents, and survivors regarding federal and state benefits such as compensation, pension, education, medical treatment, home loans, burial benefits, and license plate designation. I'm here today to discuss the critical role of our federally chartered Veteran Service Organization posts in LA County. The Veterans Administration has identified an underutilization of VA healthcare and benefits in Los Angeles County and has actively partnered with the county to identify veterans through intentionally collaborative efforts outlined in various data sharing agreements and MOUs with the county. One example of the collaboration was the Veteran Experience Action Center, in which veterans were able to call in and get real-time access to their county veteran service officers, VA healthcare, VA benefits, VA Board of Appeals, and peer support for ongoing linkage and support. In LA County, our strategy relies on partnering with local VSO posts to host family and resource-centered events in which the county brings peer support specialists and accredited service reps, while inviting state and federal partners as well as local community-based organizations to provide information and resources to increase healthcare and benefits enrollment. Government funding is often restricted, and we consistently rely on our local posts for temporary financial assistance for veterans who find themselves in crisis. But those post funds are not unlimited, and VSO leadership has reported that the supplemental funds raised by renting out their respective facilities is essential for having the resources necessary to provide the temporary financial assistance so often needed by our veterans in crisis. Other uses for VSO facilities that we're aware of are educational activities, all types of veterans and their families, including seminars and workshops on issues of vital importance to that community, such as healthcare, VA's medical system and program, state and local government assistance, grief support, federal law and benefits programs, and disabled veterans assistance. Patriotic events, including flag raising ceremonies, government and community events for Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Flag Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Pearl Harbor Day, and Election Day, during which meeting halls regularly serve as polling places. Charitable activities for veterans and veteran-supported organizations in the community, including housing homeless veterans, Operation Comfort Warriors, which is a furniture and grocery program for recovering troops, National and State of California BoE State, Boy Scouts, Boys Baseball, American Legion Riders, Veterans Serving Americans National Emergency Program, American Legion Ambulance Services Program, low cost or even free food for veterans from local restaurants or a kitchen on the property, amateur radio club for veterans and youth, and more. Memorial services activity, including ceremonies for deceased veterans or auxiliary members, group counseling, work groups and services, grief support programs, and financial assistance programs. Also fundraising activities, including charity events, silent auctions, thrift shops, as well as renting part of the property out to nonprofit organizations and for third-party special events like galas, weddings, parties, or film screenings at Hollywood American Legion. The intent here is to maximize VSO ability to raise outside funds in order to support our veterans in crisis. Revoking exemption status reduces our ability to get these veterans in crisis the temporary financial assistance they need, which negatively impacts our ability to keep veterans housed and off the street. Throughout my time with the county, I can recall many instances when we relied on American Legion posts or VFW posts or a Marine Corps League to come to the rescue for a veteran experiencing homelessness due to a financial crisis. And many times the funds they provided not only helped keep the veteran in their home, but also helped keep the veteran alive. I sincerely appreciate the board's time today and the fact that you are looking into this critical issue at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinner. Can you explain, I think you kind of touched on it, but how veterans service organizations differ from other service organizations and the specific types of services that VSOs provide to veterans through their activities held on the property?
Yeah, the critical piece is really the fact that they have their membership, and often, county services, VA services doesn't reach all those veterans, and so really being able to partner with those VSOs and bring the resources directly to them through a partnership is really kind of how we're maximizing getting in front of all veterans and their family members. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Let me ask this other one. What about, based on your experience, can you provide specific examples of how veteran organizations use their properties for the benefit of veterans and the frequency of these uses?
Yeah, so there's two types of uses from what I've seen. There's the one where it's supporting the membership directly, so events specifically for the post membership, and then the post renting their facility out for a non-veteran specific purpose or reason. Those funds that are collected from the second piece that would typically be taxed goes to their account, which provides the temporary financial assistance. Often the county and federal government and state government cannot move quick enough to provide funding in emergency situations, and we've relied on those posts and the funds that they've created by renting out their halls for non-veteran specific events.
And now that you mentioned non-veteran uses, how often do you think that happens yearly? Do you know?
No idea on that.
Okay. And then on the flip side, how often is the hall or the facilities used for veterans uses? Like, I know that they must have like patriotic days or something like that for the veterans.
Correct. Yeah, I think every post differs based on post 43 in LA County. They have a parking lot that they rent out. Not every post has a parking lot that they can rent out. Post 43 also has a beautiful theater that was reconstructed a few years back, and so they have that to rent out. I think it depends on each individual post and what their property entails. But as far as like a frequency or a ratio, I do not have that at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if there's any other I think we do have one from our deputy controller.
Thank you, Mr. Zenner, for your presentation and coming back before this body. You mentioned earlier in your presentation there's a hotline for veteran support that's being used to facilitate resources. I don't know if we still have them or not.
Yeah, so I mentioned the Veteran Experience Action Center. So that was a collaboration between the VA, Benefits Administration, Healthcare Administration, the Veteran Experience Office out of DC, as well as CalVet and LA County. And so basically what we did is we worked to get veterans appointments over a 3-day period to where they could get access to every level of VA service, state and county, for ease of service delivery. So we were really targeting traditionally underserved subpopulations of veterans, like homeless, LGBTQ, things like that. But it was a 3-day period process, and there was actually 2 Veteran Experience Action Centers. Both times we served over 300 veterans during that 3-day period. However, LA County does have a ongoing support line, excuse me, that is available for all veterans and their family members 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's the VPN support line. VPN stands for Veteran Peer Access Network, and that number is 1-800-854-7771. Press 3, and you'll get a veteran or a family member.
Thank you.
Also, one last question for me, and then I'll check with other members. But how often does how often does your organization use the property to host fundraising activities?
LA County does not engage in fundraising. My department does not engage in fundraising activities with any of the folks.
Okay. I think there's no other question. I think we're good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, Ms. Taylor, who's our next speaker?
Yes, our next speaker is Dana Nickel, Reeb Government Relations, LLC, Legislative Advocates for California Veterans Service Organizations.
Welcome. Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez, board members, and BoE staff. Thank you for giving California's veterans organizations the opportunity to participate in this working group. Our firm represents the American Legion, AMVETS, California Association of County Veteran Service Officers, the California State Commanders Veterans Council, the Military Officers Association of America, and the Vietnam Veterans of America. The Legion, AMVETS, MOA, and VVA are 501c19 tax-exempt organizations. These organizations benefit veterans of the United States Armed Forces. The Jewish American War Veterans, one of the members of our client, the California State Commanders Veterans Council, is one of the oldest veterans groups in the country. It was founded in 1896 by Jewish veterans of the Civil War. The Spanish-American War, World Wars I and II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan have seen the expansion of existing veterans groups, as well as some conflict-specific organizations. The purpose of these groups was to first and foremost aid former service members in transitioning back to civilian society. Those who went to war in the 20th century were basically cut off from their homes and families for months or years. Upon return to the U.S., many of these service members felt isolated. Those who were not still had to reestablish their place in society. Many veterans were entering college for the first time in their late 20s or 30s. Some had no civilian job skills and were competing for entry-level jobs with 17 and 18-year-olds. Also, all of these wars brought about huge changes in society, culture, and technology. The country they returned to may have been radically different from when they left it. Also, many of the psychological wounds of war further complicated their reintegration into the peacetime civilian world. These veterans made those sacrifices for us so we could all enjoy our freedoms and opportunities. Veteran service organizations provide peer-to-peer network for assisting veterans. They allow veterans to speak in the public arena with a common voice and to advocate for policies that will benefit them and their families. These organizations don't just speak for veterans of past wars, they speak on behalf of the young men and women currently serving. They do this because they know what it was like to be there and the stresses faced by returning home and discharging into the civilian world. Veteran service organizations help veterans understand the importance of strong communities, and many of them engage in civic endeavors. The Legion's Boys and Girls State Civic Program, the VFW's Voice of Democracy Scholarship Program, AMVET's Thrift Stores and Suicide Prevention Campaign, Veteran Stand-Downs for Homeless Vets, Baseball Leagues for Youth, and scores of other programs to help the community and veterans. I had spoken with representatives of other American Legion posts in the last week and gathered information from them regarding the viability of their posts, taxation, and the services they provide. Legion Post 108 in Amador was one of these. Post 108 in Amador reports they struggle to pay their annual property taxes. High monthly water, trash, PG&E, and other monthly bills present challenges to keeping this over 100-year-old post in operation. So when they've been there for 100 years. Post 108 reports supporting active duty military veterans and their families in the local community. They offer suicide prevention awareness, stand downs for homeless vets, community events for children, and support a veteran service officer. Post 108 also provides a funeral honor guard that includes rifle volley, flag folding, and flag presentation to survivors of deceased veterans. This is all done free of charge. Legion Post 131 in Santa Ana is a small post that also faces challenges related to the cost of staying open and taxation. Their income in 2022 was about $44,000. Taxation accounted for $8,000, insurance $5,000, utilities and security $12,000, phone and internet $1,000, business licensing $500, property upkeep and improvements were $3,000. That leaves about $15,000 left over, which includes janitorial and other incidental costs. Their property tax bill was $5,481 for the building only. Their 15-stall parking lot was taxed $919. The governor's COVID orders did waive the taxes levied against the post canteen. That's what they call the bars. However, these fees are being reinstated, and that will be about $680. Now, I realize that the canteens are not what part of this conversation, but these still are cost pressures on the posts. COVID relief did help because vet posts were hit pretty hard during the pandemic. Post 131 hosts some Red Cross functions for free. Some of their funding comes from a few other nonprofits that have stepped up with some relief funding. If the posts had more available funding, they would be able to reintroduce Legion Ball, bring more vets in for counseling. Currently, they can only help the vets who walking off the street looking for help. They can increase assistance with housing programs and increase assistance with processing of VA claims. Increasing these activities will also attract new members. Legion District 26, which encompasses the Bay Area, the Legion posts in San Mateo, Redwood City, Pacifica, San Bruno, and East Palo Alto had reported to us in 2015 that they were not being extended the full exemptions in San Mateo County. Legion Post 15 in Stockton, then Senator Galgiani's office contacted us and reported that the Legion Post there was facing a large assessment and were close to closing. The post is still in operation, however, and I'm not sure what their present status is. The California Settlers Association was in support of SB 2 in 2015, the bill that sought to bring property tax relief to vet posts in 2015. When we run these bills, we were the sponsors of pretty much all the legislation that sought to bring some relief on property taxation for vet halls. And in those analyses was always the slippery slope argument brought up by the legislature. And that was when veterans organizations, their concern was that other nonprofits such as the Elks and the Rotary would clamor for similar consideration on their property taxes. While the work on these fraternal service organizations is commendable, and many veterans also belong to them, the purpose of veteran service organizations serve a unique mission and purpose. According to the Office of the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA recognizes vet service orgs for the purpose of assisting claimants for VA benefits in the preparation, presentation, and prosecution of VA claims. VA has implemented this authority in Section 14628 of Title 38 of the CFR, which prescribes the application requirements for national, state, and local organizations. While vet service orgs do all of the good works in their communities and for the local veterans, one of the primary goals is to assist the veterans in their area apply for and obtain their federal veterans benefits. Unlike Social Security, which can be applied for with a 3x5 card, every veteran's military service is unique to the individual. The rules governing veterans benefits are complicated and voluminous, comprising a few phone books worth of CFRs. Vet service orgs and county veteran service officers are the local interface for veterans wishing to connect to their VA benefits. VA benefits can often be very generous and life-changing for the vet. These benefits can also shift vets from overly impacted state and local programs to the appropriate VA or Department of Defense program. In FY 21-22, California's veterans qualified for over $500 million in VA benefits, which are for the most part paid to veterans as a monthly cash benefit paid directly to the vet from the VA. These payments usually last for the lifetime of the vet and in some cases extend to the surviving spouse. Each year, more vets are qualified for another $500 million, which they will receive for the rest of their lives. These new federal monies pump up the local economies and tax base and add to the state's economic engine. A VA benefit story from Los Angeles. A Vietnam veteran attempted to file for Agent Orange exposure benefits on his own in 2002. He was denied. The veteran died in 2013 from type 2 diabetes and hepatitis C as a result of Agent Orange exposure. In 2014, the widow attempted to file for the benefits again, but was only able to obtain a $2,000 burial benefit. In 2017, she visited a veteran service officer for assistance. They fought the VA on this case for the next 4 years. She was subsequently received a check for $966 and another check for $335,000. She is also receiving a monthly check from the VA for the rest of her life. Had her husband visited a CVSO or a Veterans Post service officer from one of the vet service organizations, he may have received those funds much earlier and possibly received medical attention which could have extended his life. The nation and state have granted special considerations to veteran service organizations because of the unique and hazardous nature of military service. I believe that's all my remarks. I think a lot of these questions, some of the questions you had earlier for the assessors and so forth, or for Jim Zenner, could actually be answered by the gentleman that will be following me, because they're the boots on the ground that represent these veterans posts and face the day-to-day difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you. That was some good information. Some of it was kind of depressing, but thank you for the information. We do have some questions. Let me start with my co-chair, Ms. Lieber.
Thank you. I really appreciate your testimony here today, and it was so full of a variety of issues that I think that each of us would welcome it if you had the time to submit some written testimony for us. I've taken some notes, but it was, nothing like the full volume of facts that you had, so I would really appreciate receiving that.
You bet, of course. I'll get that to the board.
Thank you so much.
Member Gaines, I think, has another question or comment.
Yeah, thank you for just clarifying also the role that is played by the American Legion posts and highlighting that one in Amador, and also the stories in terms of how you can get those benefits for veterans and how much more efficient that is. And I thank you for shining light on it. I didn't realize that you played that sort of role. I guess as an elected official, I'm often going there for event-related things, retiring general or something of that sort, even a pancake breakfast. But yeah, they are integral to our community, and we're excited about working here at the BoE to see if we can provide some relief. You did mention SB 2. Was that Senator Joel Anderson that carried that?
Yes, it was, Senator.
And that was in 2015?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was our last attempt, I believe.
Okay.
And and I heard earlier that one of the gentlemen on here said that billions would be lost if we liberalized the interpretation of the exemption. However, in 2015, on the SB2 analysis, the BOE said they would lose about $500,000 if the bill would have passed.
Thank you for the info. That's very, yeah, that's nice to have that clarified. And I know that that earlier conversation, we were talking about total benefits, but it's nice to have kind of the rifle shot number for what we're talking about potentially in terms of how you may want to proceed. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think there's no other questions, right? I think we're good. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Certainly. No, I'm not going to ask for a break, but if you are, we'll take it.
Just a quick 5-minute break, then we'll go back to our next speaker.
All right, thank you.
All righty. if you please announce our next speaker.
Yes, our next speaker is Roger Meyer, Adjutant Quartermaster, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of California, Executive Director of the California VFW.
Is he
Should
on
be
the
on
line?
Teams,
He should
yeah.
be on Teams.
A second.
I am on Teams. Chairman Vasquez, Board, thank you for this opportunity to address you. My name's Roger Meyer. I'm the State Adjutant Quartermaster for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Department of California. I will apologize beforehand for any redundancy that I'm about to give you, as most of us are going to tout most of the same good work that our veteran service organizations do. 20 years ago, we had over 400 VFW posts in the state. We currently are down to 260. Not all of these posts have property, have a hall. Some of them meet in county memorial buildings. So again, reiterating, I don't believe less than 260 posts would cause billions of dollars in lost revenue concerning the subject. Our posts have seen increases in insurance, utilities, in services that have made it difficult for our posts to keep their doors open. Many of our posts are old and in need of repairs. They don't have the reserves to afford to make some of these expensive repairs to their buildings. An example is a couple weeks ago, Post 8900 in Fresno had a roof collapse in the middle, and now they are facing a $50,000 bill to remove that debris from the area. Our VFW posts play a crucial role in our communities. Last year, California Post contributed over $7 million in community service within the state. That includes almost $1.7 million in monetary donations alone. The VFW also has school scholarship programs known as Voice of Democracy and the Patriots Pin. Last year, California Posts awarded approximately $123,000 in school scholarships, student scholarships. This does not include the work that they do with the Scouts, both Boy and Girl Scouts, with the JROTC and our high school programs, Civil Air Patrol, and other youth organizations. We have posts that have VFW honor guards that provide funeral services for our departed veterans. They participate in local parades, rodeos, and other events within our community. The VFW has opened our post doors and collaborated with other organizations like the Flying Doctors in Humana to hold veteran health clinics within our post halls. They allow other nonprofits to use their facilities free of charge. More importantly, we also have some posts that have started opening their doors monthly to do benefit clinics for our veterans, especially with the passage of the PACT Act and the number of veterans who are filing VA claims. And this allows the veterans to go in and find out what benefits the VA that they may qualify for. Our posts provide a safe place for our combat veterans to gather. There's been talk about the canteen, AKA the bar. This is mostly where those veterans congregate and they talk with other veterans about issues they're experiencing that a normal person will not understand. And this is kind of like their therapy in order to be able to talk to them. How does our VFW post do all this? Well, some of them have canteens. Some of them have pancake breakfasts. They have meals where they raise money, and they engage in hall rentals, which can include non-veteran groups renting their home. These funds provide for the scholarships. They provide for our unmet needs programs that you heard earlier about, where veterans who have an unexpected expense can come, and we'll have VFW posts that will collaborate together and help pay for a car repair, help pay for rent if somebody has fallen behind. We also have disaster relief. The California wildfires, the Maui wildfires, our posts have all contributed to those great causes. And then we have the basic cost of operation just to keep our post open so we can continue to do the work that we're doing. Looking at it, if there's a way somewhere along the line that we can get legislation passed, the broadness about whether or not things are done for a social purpose versus the business side, that money that would come back to the post obviously would be reinvested in the community by looking at all that we currently do. So with that, I appreciate the time to address you, and will answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Can you elaborate on the importance of veterans organizations' exemption to VSOs, especially in light of the financial challenges VSOs face today?
Well, as you heard from Mr. Nickel, our posts are, the insurance costs continue to go up. The utilities continue to go up. So as they have these additional costs, then you put on top of it, you have, $5,000, $6,000, $9,000 in property taxes. For a post, that means a lot of money that they have to come up with. And that is money then that is being taken away from their ability to do other good deeds with.
And I asked Mr. Zinner, and I was wondering if you, or if your group specifically does use the veterans organizations to do some, on their properties, some benefits or fundraisers.
Well, so for instance, I talked about the dinners. You may have a breakfast, you may have a dinner. We consider those as a fundraiser because usually they make a little bit of money and they put that a lot of times into their relief fund. So we do have posts that have fundraisers. We have a motorcycle club in the state of California. They use one post. They do a poker night where they raise funds that they use that money to help needy veterans with.
You mentioned they're down to what, like 200 posts statewide?
We're down currently to approximately 260 posts for the veterans of foreign wars.
Of foreign wars, okay. Now, those are different than some of the other veteran posts, no?
It is, and it is not.
Oh.
So some of our posts are co-located. You could have an American Legion, a Marine Corps League, and a VFW that all meet in the same building.
That was my next question.
Are separated. Go ahead, sir. Sorry.
No, that was my next question, because I thought I heard one of the earlier speakers saying that there wasn't a post in LA County, but I thought I'd been to an American Legion post in Culver City.
We do have VFW posts in LA County. They probably have never filed for the exemption because they don't feel that they qualified. I have posts in Lomita, Compton, Inglewood. I'm trying to think how far it goes up because we have Canoga Park, and I think Canoga Park may be in LA County.
It is.
San Fernando. We have quite a few posts down in that area. It's just that none of them have applied for any exemptions, and I think because most of them feel that either they don't know how to do it or they feel that they don't qualify based on the criteria set out concerning the social piece that's disqualifying them.
Well, it's interesting. What, if any, recruitment or outreach are you doing to try to get to these folks that are not, for whatever reasons, not applying?
I currently do not. I don't know each of the individual county, the assessors. I do actually, I want to give credit to Assessor Wynn's folks here in Sacramento County, because as the state headquarters, we do apply for the exemption and it is granted to us. And her office has been really good to work with since I've come into this position. The other ones, I've talked to several of them where they said that they don't qualify for an exemption, but I do not have individual outreach to these posts as far as for them to try to get the OCC certificate and then go forward from there.
Do you happen to know what disqualifies them, the ones you've talked to?
Well, what most of them talk about is the fact that the social activities piece, you know, the posts they use to have their monthly business meetings, where they determine how they're going to spend their money, the business of the post. And then after that, you're going to have your breakfast, lunch, dinners, which probably are not going to be, will be considered a social event. Any of their hall rentals will be considered a social event. So, you know, they're looking at it. What they do does not qualify within the terms of the regulations or the law.
Thank you. I think we have a question here from my deputy controller.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation and for all the work you're doing in the veterans community. My first question was, you mentioned there's 260 posts now statewide. Do you have a number in mind when it was at its peak?
I do not have that. From what I understand, and this is way pre Roger being here, it's back when I was working for the state of California. Their peak was right, I think, just a little more than 400 posts.
400 posts. Thank you. And then my last question is just if there is some legislation passed on clearing whether or not there's social or business purposes out of Veterans Hall, what that impact would have for you and your organization and just statewide in terms of recruitment, increasing membership, and getting some of those posts back?
I don't know how much that would actually impact recruiting, but what it would do is it would allow additional money that the post could use for community service, which would have an after effect. You know, when you're out in the community and people see you and you're doing good work, it draws people into your organization. So that money, you know, as we would reinvest in our communities with our programs, you may see a side effect of increased membership just because of your presence being seen in the community.
Understood. Well said. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, I think we're good. Thank you for your presentation and your time.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it.
Ms. Taylor, who's our next?
Yes, your next speaker is Jack Porath, American Legion Post 282 Commander, La Mesa, California.
Welcome.
Chairman Vasquez, board members, thank you so very much. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to give you a little bit of perspective. First, I'd like to give you a little bit of my background. Retired Air Force. I was a VFW commander in 4 posts from 2006 to 2022, a total of 16 years. And at that same time, I was a 6-year American Legion commander over in La Mesa. What I'd like to do today is give you a perspective of really what all the posts are going through in both of my experience, what I've heard and whatever. I've heard testimony about the bar and the canteen area. Please consider that the bar area, we also pay sales taxes. We also, within the bar, have counseled people. Some people will come in especially the combat veterans. They have nobody else to talk to. They frankly will not talk until they have a couple of drinks to kind of loosen them up. And at that time, oftentimes we find that they are eligible for certain benefits, and we could then contact our chaplain or our post VSO, veteran service officer, and then they get with VA to see what they can really do to help that veteran. We recently in our post, we flew a veteran from California to North Carolina and back again so he can go to court. And we also housed him before he went to North Carolina and when he came back. And we also post the insurance. Mr. Meyer talked about the insurance steadily increasing, especially as some of the insurers leave the state of California. The insurance companies look at veterans' halls as a good opportunity to raise their rates. We have facility upkeep. We have utilities. We have janitorial. Now, please keep in mind that in a veterans club, we're all volunteers. We don't have any paid people. Bartenders, some posts do pay the bartender. What we try to do is keep all the rates as low as we possibly can. Any of the profit goes to all the various programs that we have, whether they be legislated, mandated by VFW, American Legion, American Veterans, or whatever that organization really is. Within the dining hall or the meeting hall, a lot of our meetings, we actually have presenters that come in and talk about death benefits, the PACT Act, all these various things that happen in the community. So a meeting is not only to talk about what the post is going to do, how the post is going to spend the money, what programs we're going to support within whatever funds we have, that, it's just, then we have meals, we have low-cost meals. We feed any of the homeless that come in, we'll feed them at free of charge. The veterans, some of the families, they're literally destitute. They have no money, and they come in and we provide meals to them. Our meals run between $7 and $10 for a full meal. I can't even go to McDonald's for $7 or $10. So, and this is what a local post does. Our facility upkeep. We have an old building at the post that I was at, 282. I'm now at another post. It was so bad. We had cockroaches running on the floor in the restrooms. We couldn't rent the hall. People wouldn't come in. It was terrible. We had somebody that passed on, gave us a large donation. We ended up in the facility, $160,000 to bring it back up to code. It's an old facility built in 1923, sorry. The post that I'm currently at, our facility upkeep is just tremendous. We have old buildings. We cannot afford to go out and buy a new building. Cannot afford to sell what we have and then go out and buy. Inflation itself is just out of reach. Our volunteers that we have in the post, we've lost a lot of them. A lot of people, they're working 2 jobs. They don't have the time or the energy to come in and spend their time in the VFW. We have janitorial that we're now paying for that used to be provided by a family. They moved out of state. One before that, he got so old that he just couldn't do it anymore, and we had to pay for now janitorial. We collect clothing for the homeless. We collect used flags from the community to dispose of them per the ritual for retiring flags. And we do give donations to in need. In the last month, we have been successful in our post alone to house 2 homeless veterans. I think that really speaks for itself. It really does. 2 may not be very many, but that's 2 less than are a burden to the community, to the state. Our hall is also used for funerals, remembrance ceremonies, we have the programs, all the programs that we have for, and let me talk about the baseball program for the American Legion. When I was American Legion commander, the state of California, or the American Legion California, they wanted to get the baseball program going. The burden to us was $800. That is a lot of money to put out for one program. Facility upkeep is just killing us. And with all of the things that are on, I can give you a lot of stories that happen within 282 because of conflicting entities, governmental activities within the state of California that actually shut our wheelchair lift down for 15 months, where I could have had 2 homeless or 2 veterans come down, both missing legs. We couldn't get them into the canteen because it was shut down by a governmental entity. We finally persuaded them, that's a good word, finally persuaded them to open it after 15 months at an additional cost to us of right around $10,000. Needless expenditure of money. If it weren't for the donations, people coming in and donating, a lot of the posts would not exist. And I can tell you for a fact, of the 4 posts that I was a commander at, if it weren't for the donations, we would close the doors. One of the first posts that I was a commander at, mainly World War II veterans. Our last meeting, 2 people showed up, and we then had to surrender our charter and combine in with another post. It wasn't necessarily money on that one. It was really the expiring membership. We have in our post, we have donations for fire, or we have programs to award the fire, EMT, teachers. American Legion's got BoE State. We have scholarships, VFW, the Patriot Pen, Voice of Democracy, that we award money to. And those children not only gives them the opportunity to get money, but also gives them an opportunity to learn how to write, which I can tell you from my grandkids, from their texting, they need to sit down and write. And these programs teach the children to do that. And it also gives them a foundation. We have scouting. We have scouts that come into our post to help for the events. We are trying to raise good Americans. That's what the VFW, that's what the American Legion, that's what AMVETS, all these veterans organizations do. I was able to help Senator Anderson a little bit on SB2, and the foundation that he had on that document was well-founded. And I encourage you to take a look at that and pass it. I would make one change to that, however. I would also exclude the bar area. The bar area is not just the drinking. It is the venue to get people into the post, a lot of them. And it's a way for the canteens to make money. I agree it may not be politically, I can't think of the term, might not be politically correct, but I think it's probably the right thing to do. We have, in the post that I'm at now, we were able to purchase the entire property. We do have rentals. By the time the rentals, all the federal taxes that we pay on that and the state tax or whatever, we don't have hardly anything left. And our property tax alone is $20,000. $20,000. And I am applying for an occupation, the OCC. I submitted that letter on 22 July, and I've gotten a reply back from them today. And they're asking for a little bit more documentation, but I'm well aware of the process to get the OCC. And I've trained some other posts in how to get it. And I've used it at La Mesa and it was successful. But it did not clear all of the areas that need to be cleared. Yet I talked to posts in other counties and they seem to get the deferral. But we don't here in San Diego. And I'm not blaming anybody in San Diego. I blame really on that is a lack of guidance from above. And I would strongly encourage you, please, to take the action to help the veterans halls. We are struggling. I know 2 that are getting ready. 1 that did close. I know 2 more that's getting ready that they may be submitting because of financial. It's tough. And we're also losing members moving out of state. That's really all I have to give to you, but any questions that you might have, please.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. I know you mentioned this is mostly, well, it's pretty much driven by all volunteers. And I was just curious, as you mentioned, are you able to elaborate a little bit on your guidance on the veteran organizations in terms of their exemptions? Or do you work with many of those folks?
I get phone calls from them. Yeah, a lot of people know what I do, and I help them out how to apply for the OCC. The guidance is pretty clear. It's the documentation that is required. One of the issues that I'm having right now is the articles of incorporation. I've recently redone those and submitted those. They're up for review right now at our department level. And I think once those are approved, it will clarify the areas that the BoE wants in order to issue the OCC, that and one other document. It's pretty well clear. What I don't understand, however, in when applying for that, is why you want 3 years of financial data. A lot of posts, I think that may be where they're hung up, or they just don't have the data or whatever, and you might want to visit that. I know yearly for the San Diego, the county assessor, they also want 1 year of the financial document. Why they want that when we're a viable veterans organization, I don't know. But that's just something you might want to consider.
We will definitely take a look at that. You mentioned in your opening remarks too, or in your remarks, that you're still running, I think you said you're running still an American Legion program for the baseball. As a baseball jock, how's that going?
It's going well. I'm no longer associated with that post. I'm now down another VFW post. They needed help, and I came down to help them. I'm doing their financial now. I'm their chief financial officer, quartermaster in terms of the VFW. We have a VFW, we have an auxiliary, and we're striving to get that facility and going or whatever. But the baseball is going very well. And the couple of the coaches that I've talked to really does bring a lot of attention to the kids. A lot of times, this is the first time that they've actually really been, an organized event such as is what they do. It's a very well-run program.
Thank you. I think I have a question here from my co-chair, Ms. Lieber.
Well, just some comments. I really want to thank you for your testimony and commend you for all that you're doing and all of your volunteers are doing.
Thank you.
This has been tremendously valuable in telling us how the puzzle pieces fit together or don't. And while we have a certain charge here on the BoE, each of the board members are connected to and can communicate with other layers of government in terms of the state legislature and et cetera. So this has been just tremendously valuable in hearing the details that you have from your knowledge of the practice. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would like to add, one of the areas or one thing that we talk about, or that you all talked about, somebody did, is the hall usage itself for meetings or whatever is not exempt. In that same area, we have our meals. In the kitchen itself, I know a VFW post that they actually prepare meals for homeless, and they send meals out from the post at cost. I think the meal is $4 or $5 that they charge the homebound people for delivery of that meal, and you have volunteers going ahead and doing that. We have 2 people out of our post that actually go downtown, give water, food, and all that to the homeless, whether they're veterans or not. You see a lot of activity from the VFW, American Legion. You see a lot of activity from these posts that just really nobody even cares about or even considers. A lot of the veterans, especially the combat veterans, they're really truly in need. They cannot assimilate well with civilian society. They have experiences that only they can really discuss, and only a former military member, oftentimes, that's the only people that they'll really talk to, including their psychiatrist. And I can tell you from my counseling, some people, they have told me stuff that they swore that they would never tell anybody else. And their experiences are just horrific, some of them. And they need a place. And the canteen, the membership, the other members, the family, we're all one big family. Doesn't matter what service or whatever.
Well, I really thank you so much for that perspective. And I just talked to someone the other day who's a retired RN who is disabled, and her husband is partially disabled. And where they live, they made an attempt to avail themselves of Meals on Wheels. And there's a 6-month waiting list in their area to get those meals. And so, an organization that is nimble, such as yours, and can fill in around the gaps, I think is just tremendously valuable. And I just read the other day in an article about the real increase in suicide in America. And I think it's frankly because of the isolation of many Americans, and in particular, individuals who are just everyday people and don't necessarily have the money to go out to some place and interface socially, or don't feel like they have a particular faith community that they fit into. I think the veterans organizations are tremendously valuable in that respect. So I really appreciate so much your testimony and all the work that you and your volunteers are doing. And it really is, the volunteer commitments are really a commitment and a mission that person needs to have, because we're all getting a little bit older, and there are, as you said, so many people who need to work 2 to 3 jobs to keep going, and it's a real commitment when someone signs up to come and do those food duties and other kinds of things. So this has been a real learning experience for us, and I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And if the governmental activity or entities allow things to continue the way they are, I think you're going to see more VFW, American Legion posts close their doors. They just can't make it. It's tough. It really is. It's a tough environment. And when that post leaves the community, it's the community that's going to feel it, not the people that are elected to office or whatever. And I'm not demeaning any of you, believe me, but I was elected too. But it really will be felt for the community and for the families. We do a lot. We do a lot more than what's ever publicized.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple more questions. Member Gaines, and then my deputy controller has a question also.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It provided so much clarity in terms of all the services that you're providing. I can't believe the nature of you and your voluntary efforts. It sounds like you go from one post to the next. You're the trooper that's putting the fire out. So thank you for what you do. I'm looking forward to this process, and I am hopeful that we will be able to provide some sort of relief. And so I want to thank my colleagues for elevating this and making it an issue where we might be able to work with folks in the legislature and see if something can be done. I did have a question for you. You mentioned the PAC Act. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, that was President Biden recently signed that it was last year, I believe. And that has opened the doors for people that were stationed in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us, I was one of the ones stationed in Thailand, exposed to Agent Orange, could not apply for any benefits because the United States did not recognize Thailand as being in the Vietnam conflict. However, we were, and we also supported the excursions in Laos, Cambodia. That was classified at the time. It's now been declassified. But that opened up the door for the Agent Orange for that, the burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. There were some other things included in that PACT Act, but that basically it just opened the door up and finally granted the disability option to people apply for that were exposed to all that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for clarifying that. You know, through these hearings, we've been hearing a lot about potential benefits for Agent Orange and also this issue with the burn pits. But thank you for clarifying that it's the PAC Act. Very much appreciated, and hopefully we'll get the proper benefits to our vets.
And I might say that in the bar, a lot of people come in and ask about that, and a lot of people got the answers to that veteran, and we've been able to get them to apply for the benefits.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My Deputy Controller, I think, has a question for you.
Thank you, Commander. I want to first thank you for your service to this great nation and for all the work you're doing in the community. And also, too, it's a beautiful background, beautiful home you're in. Well-deserved retirement. I hope you're enjoying it to the fullest. You make an interesting argument about the bar area being a place not only for a social purpose, but a way of therapy, a way of connecting, a way of getting veterans to speak out about the issues they're facing and connecting them to the services that they rightfully deserve and need. And then also, too, I'm just really happy to hear that you've taken steps to apply for an OCC here at the Board of Equalization. Our executive director has done a great job of trying to process those as fast as they can. And I'm really, really happy to hear that. And then also, too, you mentioned in the very, very beginning of your presentation about the insurance increases that your post is seeing. And is that something that's doubling, tripling over the years?
It's gone up, yes. It's gone up tremendously. In our post right now, I think it was Farmers or State Farm that said that they're no longer going to cover veterans organizations. And their restrictions are more and more. We had to go to a VFW and friendly insurance company called Lockton, Lockton Affinity. And by getting the insurance through them, it costs more. Nothing ever gets cheap, not in California. It's just getting more and more expensive. And that money that we're putting out is it's a lot of money.
Now, on top of the property, on top of the hefty property tax bill you're facing annually too, I understand, sir. Thank you for your presentation, and hopefully this board is going to continue to work to help out our veteran communities. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and your service, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some relief here down the road.
Thank you. I'm going to have to leave you all, but thank you so very, very much for allowing me to testify in this important issue.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Taylor, who's our next one?
Yes, this will be our final speaker on this topic. Smokey Rickard, the Executive Director of the Department of California AMVETS. I believe he is on Teams. Okay. No, I believe he is
John
not
Jack.
online at this time.
It looks like Porath. American Legion Post 282.
All right. Well, if you'd like, we could we could move on to our next topic, and if he comes back on Teams, we can alert you.
Sure.
All right. The next topic is number 3, current outreach and education issues from assessors and BoE perspective to enhance communication and fully inform veterans, disabled veterans, and homeowners of current exemptions and deadlines. The first 3A, disabled veterans exemptions and exemptions available for homeless veterans. And our speakers today would be Honorable Christina Wynn, Peter Kim, Communications Director, Board of Equalization, and Antonio Castro, Chief Appraiser, Los Angeles County Assessor's Office.
Hi, thank you for
Welcome
having me
back.
back. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to allow CAA to comment on this portion of the meeting. I think I can speak for all assessors when I say that outreach is definitely a challenge and efforts are ongoing all the time. This topic addresses several of the exemptions, and so when I'm speaking, I'm really referring to both the disabled veterans and the homeowners. I think you should know that one of the most direct ways assessors communicate with the property owner about these exemptions is through direct mail. Information provided by the property owner on the preliminary change in ownership report, also known as the PCOR for short, that is filed at the time a deed is recorded, notifies the assessor that the property owner may qualify for a benefit. There are several, like a whole front page of checklists, check boxes off of questions that are there. And basically that's to inform us that someone may qualify for a benefit. So based on that, exemption information and applications are sent directly to the property owner, and that is key timing so that they can apply right away. So owners are receiving this information. Now, what about just in general outreach? Really, for us, mostly this has been geared towards disabled veterans. And in 2019, and now I'm speaking for Sacramento County, right before the pandemic, we noticed that San Diego County, so some props to San Diego here, they had a great outreach program for disabled veterans, and they kindly agreed to let us use their program as a model for our own. And we began our own Million More Thanks program. And the idea behind this was to increase awareness of the disabled veterans exemption and therefore increase the number of exemptions granted. So our goal was to achieve an additional 1 million in tax dollars saved. So that's not assessed value exempted, that's tax savings. So that's much more than 1 million exempted, obviously. It took us about 2 years to reach that goal, but we did do it. And this program includes outreach directly to the County Veteran Service Office, excuse me, Cal Vet offices. Presentations were made by PowerPoint to several of these offices. They agreed to help get this information out to the veterans that they worked with. We also upgraded our website and created special phone numbers and email addresses so that we could give direct access to anybody who wanted to call and talk to staff about this exemption. We send media notifications. We time it around Veterans and Memorial Day because that's when this is on people's minds and gets their attention, because really it's hard to get attention on some of these matters. A lot of people don't want to think about property taxes. It's not that fun to think about. So we have to be creative. We increased our staffing to address this because when you increase communications and you're expecting more filings, you're going to have more people available to answer questions, answer the phone, and take care of the filings. And we continue this effort on to today. I mean, it really never ends. Every time I speak to the public, I do about 2 public speaking engagements a month, I bring up this exemption. But really, I think one of the things that is important to remember about this exemption, it's based on their percent rating. And we know that ratings change. And so we really have to remember to educate people to come back and apply when their rating reaches 100%. A lot of people want to get this benefit. They're not 100% disabled. And I know there's efforts out there to change that, and I applaud that and support it. But right now, that's not how the rules are. So for those that are granted the 100% disability, they can come back and apply. And so it's really important and almost an unknown aspect, because I think a lot of disabled veterans believe that, well, I didn't qualify, I'll never qualify. But that's not the case. And we were told that veteran service offices can help disabled veterans apply to be re-rated. And so it's really important that they reach out and get help. And if they call assessors' offices, a lot of times those offices have contacts with the county or their veteran service office, and then they can put people in touch with the veteran service office. So that's what we do, and it's never ending, and we're glad to do it too. That's it.
Thank you, Assessor Nguyen, for your input. And I guess in your county, do you receive any questions from local veteran groups or veterans in general about current property tax exemption for the disabled veterans?
Well, the staff will entertain those questions. They do know, because we have reached out to them. They know who to contact when questions pop up. They will reach out to us. They have our contacts. So and I'm sure we get them. I don't work directly with that group on a daily basis, but they're all trained to respond directly to those questions. I do get some questions when I'm giving presentations, though, from veterans. So there are a lot of people who don't know about this.
Okay. Well, let me see if there's other questions from any of the other members. I think we're good. Thank you for your input, though.
Thank you.
Who's next, Ms. Taylor?
Perhaps Mr. Castro might like to comment on this topic?
Sure. Is he still with us?
He is?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. I was just slow to the button there.
No, welcome back.
Yes, thank you very much. As far as community outreach and programs, Assessor Prang is big on meeting the public. We have homeowners resource fairs, assessors resource fairs with various topics, including disabled veterans exemptions, homeowners exemptions, Prop 19 parent-to-child transfers, ADUs, what happens when a property owner dies, and so forth. And we always try to have a full staff to answer all the questions, whether it be exemptions or related to the veterans organization, individual veterans, or disabled veterans. We have a major presence in social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube videos as well. We've had resources for the past couple of years in cities such as Hacienda Heights, Huntington Park, Temple City, Arcadia, Long Beach, and Inglewood. Many of these are handled through our public information officer, Stephen Whitmore, as well as the public affairs team. We have Q&A group sessions, Q&A one-on-ones, individuals, PowerPoint presentations. They're always free and open to the general public. And I spoke with the PIO, and we are open to collaboration or discussions with representatives of veterans organizations. But after hearing today's presentations, they seem quite informed, knowledgeable, and aware of many of these hurdles. And as one gentleman stated, 3-year financial data, it's something maybe they don't want to give up or can't have access to it. So it seems like they already know some of these hurdles. But to say that we've denied these people, we just never gotten that far to research and check to see whether they qualify other than the OCC. So once they get past the OCC, we can go out and visit and check the exempt usage. We can make judgment calls. We can make sure that it's not incidental. We'll bend over backwards to see what we can do, but we can't get anywhere until it get past that OCC. And I think that's where the hurdle is at this point. That's all I have for now. If anybody has any questions with regards to our outreach programs.
No, thank you. I've actually participated with some of your resource fairs. You guys do an excellent job.
Great. Thank you, Chair Vasquez.
We do have a question from my vice chair. Ms. Lieber.
I have one question, and I kind of was going to ask the previous speaker this, but I know that some government agencies are restricted in terms of what kind of information can be printed on the outside of the envelopes that they send out to many people. I know that, for example, the DMV is allowed to print things on the outside of the many envelopes that they send out, but it has to pertain to the vehicle code only. And do you know if you have the ability to send things out where it's something that might go to everyone, because it seems like it might be an adult child of a veteran that would be handling that person's business. Do you have the ability to do that kind of very broad outreach?
At this point, no. The mass mailing, as you know, LA County is quite large in population and in size. I think the resource fairs currently are the only ones where we actually try to give as much information. As I said, the social media, the websites that we have. But then again, we would like a chance to discuss this with veterans organizations to collaborate on how we could actually do a better job. And we'd be willing to sit down with them and discuss that to see how far we can go to get the message out.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I think we're good. Thank you for your input.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chair Vasquez.
Ms. Taylor, where are we at?
Next, we would have Mr. Peter Kim, Chief Communications Officer.
Oh. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. Peter Kim, Chief Communications Officer. Thank you for this opportunity to make a brief presentation for the BoE's role. As you know, the education and outreach is led by our Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office, led by Lisa Thompson, and I partner with her regularly to assist taxpayers. Just so that you know, recently the BoE, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office, has published information sheets on the disabled veterans exemption and the homeowners exemption. We did also promote these information sheets on our social media pages, or platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And also, as you're aware of, information on exemptions, on all the exemptions, are available on our website with FAQs and additional resources. And as Assessor Nguyen and Assessor Prang's office has just mentioned, the three exemptions that we're talking about here, they're filed directly with the assessor's offices. And so I know that they're working very closely with the veterans groups to do the outreach. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim, for all your work. And I was just wondering, given our resources, what, I know you mentioned we're getting this out as on different I guess different avenues to get the information out. I was wondering, is it possible to expand some of the outreach that would include, I guess, non-traditional platforms?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chairman Vasquez. As you know, in the last few months, we've been primarily focused on the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, and so now that that's concluded, I could definitely consult with the Taxpayer Rights Advocate and with the Executive Director to see what other types of outreach opportunities there may be.
Appreciate it. Looks like we have a question here from our Deputy Controller.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Always a pleasure to see you. I think at our last board work group, we had a consensus from the board members. I don't know if it came from Senator Gaines or not about a homeowners exemption button, about the possibility of putting that on the website, on the homepage, and I was just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you for the question, Deputy Controller Emron. Actually, I do remember that suggestion, and we, again, we were focusing on the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing, and so now that that's concluded, I am looking into ways to see how we can feature these exemptions, these property tax savings on our website more prominently. As you know, that there was the Hurricane Hillary or Tropical Storm Hillary, and of course we've been featuring disaster relief for those that may have been impacted by that. So I'm well aware of that, and in the next few months, I will be happy to report we'll be having some changes to the website on that.
Yeah,
respect,
that'd be
yes.
great. Maybe even right next to the mortgage relief button.
You're
Put it all be in one space. Thank you.
Thank you,
Member
Deputy
Gaines, I think-
Controller Emron, for bringing that
Oh,
up. I appreciate it. And we could be doing the same on our own websites in terms of having a link. Once you get it set up, we can link from ours to yours, so. thank
Yes,
you.
and if I could just add to that, the information sheets that our Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office has recently published, I know that the members are robust in their outreach activities and speaking engagements, and so we could get those printed for you, and you could distribute them to your constituents. As you know, you are our ambassadors, and therefore we hope that you could use those
That's
tools
wonderful.
to let the veterans know.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just wondering, do we have the ability to track some of this traffic inquiries, especially I'm thinking in terms of the whole disabled veterans exemption piece?
Yeah, I could definitely work with our property tax department. Many of the questions are actually routed to them for questions, and our Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. So I could see what type of inquiries we're getting, if there's a huge demand, if veterans are contacting us. But it appears that all the organizations and the assessors' offices are actually doing a really great job in terms of educating the veterans. So, yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands or questions, I think we're good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is 3B, homeowners exemption, Proposition 19 filing deadlines. And we have as our speakers the Honorable Christina Wynn, President-elect CAA.
She's still on the line?
Let's see if she's still on.
Yep, here I am.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I wanted to definitely say that now more than ever, it's very important for homeowners to have their homeowners exemption in place or their disabled veterans exemption, because either one would qualify them for their Prop 19 benefits. So in the past, there was less emphasis maybe on getting the homeowners exemption because it wasn't tied to so many benefits. So right now, it really, if you get your homeowner's exemption, it makes it a lot easier to process your Prop 19 benefits. The filing deadlines, I think, are confusing for many because they're confused with the move-in date. You know, the filing deadline, there were emergency rules put in place, and that gave some relief because you can get prospective Prop 19 benefits dependent on late filing of your homeowner's exemption. However, what didn't change was the fact that you can't move in late. You still have to move in within a year. So that is a little hard to manage because we're trying to figure out when did somebody move in and when did they file their homeowner's exemption, and then when did they file their Prop 19 benefit. So it's quite a handful, and the proposals to roll back this portion of Prop 19 would definitely help in the administration of this because it would roll back to the prior rules, making it less dependent on the homeowner's exemption from the aspect of having to have it as the person who received the property. And it's one less complication. It is a little difficult for the public to juggle these three dates. When did they move in? When did they file their homeowner's exemption? When did they file their Prop 19? So the deadlines are definitely a problem.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was just wondering, as you get into the whole Prop 19, what are you seeing or hearing on the ground in terms of, I guess, what strategies you might use to educate these taxpayers on specifically the Prop 19 filing?
We really try to highlight these specific rules when in our communications when we're sending out. So when somebody acquires property, particularly if they file their P-Corps, they've checked the box that they are receiving the property from a parent. We send them the information right away, the applications, the homeowner's exemption, everything. And these deadlines are highlighted. They're highlighted on our website. But still, it's very difficult for people to think about this and really understand. It's the nuances of taxation. It's never been easy. And I don't know that we're ever going to make this so simple that everyone will instantly understand. It's just a matter of education. And I think just highlighting the fact that these deadlines are in place. But if this does get rolled back either on the ballot or through, well, it would have to be on the ballot, then that would simplify, this would go away from that aspect.
All righty. Seeing no other questions here, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Taylor, who do we have?
Yes, our next speaker is Peter Kim, Chief of Communications, Board of Equalization.
Back by popular demand.
I didn't know it was going to be so quick. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon again, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. Peter Kim, Chief Communications Officer. As mentioned before, education and outreach is led by our Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office in partnership with myself and Communications. However, as you know, for Proposition 19, education and outreach has been an agency-wide task. Since the passage of Proposition 19 in November 2020, for taxpayers, we have done the following. One, we established a Proposition 19 webpage as a one-stop shop, including comparison charts, guidance, related legislation, FAQs, and additional resources. Since June 30th of 2023, we've had over 500,000 unique external page views for the website for that Proposition 19 webpage. Second, we've issued a Proposition 19 fact sheet initially in April of 2021 and updated the fact sheet in April of 2022. And also, in addition, we've translated the fact sheet in both Spanish and Chinese. Three, we've also created an introduction to Proposition 19 presentation in February of 2021 and updated it recently in April of 2023, and we've shared that with your offices. Four, as you know, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office has also updated the information sheets reflecting the changes due to Proposition 19. Five, as a recommendation from Chairman Vasquez, we've also posted a Proposition 19 filing request checklist, so that is also featured on our website. Six, in fiscal year 2021-2022, the County Assessed Properties Division answered approximately 6,440 calls and 1,590 email inquiries related to Proposition 19. In fiscal year 2020 to 2021, the County Assessed Properties Division answered approximately 3,144 calls and over 1,000 email inquiries related to Proposition 19. As you know, the implementation process of Proposition 19 is ongoing. The website and our social media channels will be updated in real time to keep taxpayers and stakeholders informed. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Oh, first of all, thank you for all you've done, especially to get the word out on Prop 19, but it still seems like there's a lot of folks that are just not taking advantage of it and filling this thing out, and then I think they just they forget that they need, this 1 year window. And I'm just wondering what more we can do to highlight that. don't really have an answer for that, but
Yeah, I think it's just going to have to we just have to approach it with an incremental approach. We just have to get the word out there. I know that one of the reasons why we've had to update the fact sheet and the presentation is due to the implementation legislation that did clarify that from my understanding, and therefore that's the reason why, one of the reasons why we had to update our resources. And so I think, with the board's help and with the agency's help and with all of the assessors' help, we could get the word out there that that's a requirement.
yeah, just start pushing it out.
Correct.
Oh, Member Gaines, I think, has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm just curious about the number of inquiries, the hits that we're getting on the website. Is the increase pretty consistent from month to month?
Thank you for the question, Member Games. Yes, just based on my recollection from the time we launched the site, November of 2020 to up until now, it's been pretty consistent. The first year after the passage, definitely there are more hits than what we're receiving now,
Right.
but there hasn't really been a significant decrease, if you will. It's been pretty consistent. So it's just a reflection of how many taxpayers and assessor offices and everybody that's coming to our website to get the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair Vasquez made a comment about, people are passing away every day. So
Right.
I think there's just going to be a natural change of hands of property within family. And so important that we try to educate our constituents. And I'm just thinking that that's something else to add to a newsletter. And then I was even thinking if we did like a year-end newsletter and kind of highlighted some of the key aspects of things that have occurred throughout the year, kind of reminder.
Right.
I think, and then when we speak to folks, we can, when we're asked to speak in front of groups, we can bring these things up and just continue to educate.
That's correct, and I just want to put in another plug for the PowerPoint presentation. We recently updated the introduction to Proposition 19. One of the reasons why we had to update it was because we did need to include that taxpayers needed to file the homeowner's exemption within that 1-year period. And so we've provided your offices with a copy of the presentation along with a suggested script. So if you're invited to speak to any organization related to the subject, we hope you could use that material along with all of our fact sheets and information sheets so that the taxpayers know what their requirements are.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's Member Schaefer has a question for you.
Hi, Mr. Kim. Every once in a while, when I'm a little bored, I'll look at the BoE good name on internet and see what's there. And I run into my predecessor, Diane Harkey's name as a member once in a while, and stale information does pop up. I mentioned it to our executive director, and she and I both know that it's not our doing. It's just something that we're not involved with that talks about us. Do you ever stroll through the internet to see if there's somebody out there we can blow a whistle on or update?
Thank you for the question, Member Schaefer. Yeah, I actually do a Google search of BoE every day, just to see if there's any news items out there or if there's any information that I need to be aware of. I am aware that there's some outdated information on the website or the internet. And if there are things I can do to correct, I definitely do. But as you know, the World Wide Web is an amazing but enormous type of platform that is not in my complete control. So, but yes, I do monitor it for
If you ever find
sure.
anything that you'd like a little input from the board on, just let me know. I'll take it up with the chair.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. I think we're good.
I think we have one more speaker.
Yeah, we do,
Just an
huh?
opportunity for Antonio Castro, Chief Appraiser from the LA County Assessor's Office, to weigh in on this question of the Prop 19 exemption.
Welcome back.
Great. Thank you very much. I won't repeat everything that people have already brought up. Assessor Wynn did a good job speaking about education. And I think somebody else mentioned about mass mailing, all types of different types of ways to reach people. I wanted to mention that our public affairs team here in LA County has done an excellent job of making enhancements to our public counters through our one-stop shop type counters. We've increased the number of languages that are spoken. I believe we are having increased public coming in and asking the hard questions, and we have to be prepared for that. We just don't want to tell them that, sure, we'll send you a mail later. We want to be able to tell them and get the word and the message to them about these Prop 19. And with regards to specifically to the 1 year to file the homeowner's claim, that they would benefit. So I just definitely wanted to bring that up with regards to improvements. We have our downtown headquarters office where a lot of people come in, although it's not convenient to park and find us sometimes, but once they're here, we're here to help them. But we also have 5 regional offices that encompasses the entire county. And so I just wanted to bring that up. But education is the thing, and I'm sure Assessor Prang and the rest of the executive team will get together to see what else we can do to improve that education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castro, for your presentation. What are you seeing in terms of taxpayers unaware of the requirement to file this homeowner exemption together with the transfer exclusion?
Yeah, just unaware, uninformed. We have another chief appraiser who really works directly with his staff with regards to this, and it's just massive. If there's going to be changes to the law or legislation, that's great, but for now, we're dealing it from a mass group of people that come in are really unaware. And so it's so big at this point that I really can't pinpoint everything or anything at this point. But it's something that we're digging our digging our heels in and hoping to do a better job of educating the LA County constituents, plain and simple.
Appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
I think we have another question here from Member Gaines.
Just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Castro. I mean, in terms of the outreach effort, it's so huge in terms of how do you really get the word out to folks, so you have a situation where the second parent passes away and, if you want to live in your parents' home, wouldn't you just naturally move into it and it would kind of end there. And so I think aren't the assessors keeping track, upon death, are they keeping track of those properties? And then I know that Assessor Wynn had mentioned that they're sending out notices to property owners, but who's tracking the death and then who's notifying the next of kin?
Right.
So I don't know, what agency is that? I know that you get when you have a family member pass away, you get a death certificate. But does Prop 19 now, don't they require that the assessors have to track every property in the state of California and change of ownership?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's my recollection, and so, so who is the natural entity, government entity, to notify the next of kin of this property that you have to file for the homeowner's exemption? Is that the assessor's office? Is it the coroner's office? I don't, I'm just trying to figure out how do you let people know? Because I mean, you've got 1 year to figure it out.
Right, that's definitely a good question. Assessor Wynn, is this something up your alley or?
I can say that there is no entity that reports deaths to assessors.
Okay.
It is the responsibility of the heirs, the trustee, to file the death change in ownership statement. And the problem is a lot of times they don't know to do that, and we find out late, sometimes many years later when a deed records because they sell the property and the names don't match. the seller and the buyer don't match, and it's because someone died and they never told us. So there's probably a good chance that this has already happened and a year has passed and people will not qualify because of that. So it is, they'd have to, unless, well, actually, I take that back, because now that we have the emergency rules, if they actually moved in within a year, but they filed everything late, they can get prospective relief from their filing now, because that was decided with the emergency rules last year. But they would lose some of that time. So they would still have to pay something for that time in between, but they would get prospective relief. So some relief would be available. But, we can go back up to 8 years on death because that's not recorded. So it's a tremendous burden, and it's always been a burden to discover the deaths. That's always been difficult.
Okay, great.
My
Thank you,
vice-
Assessor Nguyen. Appreciate it.
My Vice Chair, Lieber has a question for you.
Thank you. Is that ability to do the look back in terms of if the family member moved in within the year, but they didn't do their filing until, say, 2 years, do they automatically get that, or it's permissive for the assessors to consider it?
We ask for proof. For instance, we would ask for some sort of like utility bill, or we have a long list of different items we could ask for proof. And that's the process we go through. We make every attempt to help them prove that they moved in. If they claim they did, then we try to find a way to get some proof on the record. Because in the future, if we were to be surveyed and we were found to have granted something without proof, then that could appear in our survey results as that we were not following statute. So it's really important that we make sure and follow all the rules closely so that, we can receive an audit that's favorable. We don't want to be granting something without proof.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. I think that was the last speaker. And thank you for hanging in there. I know you've been in and out all day with us. You're almost like staff today.
I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, where does that put us?
Your next item is item 4, wrap up and next steps.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Once again, thank you to the speakers and members for your input. Based on what we've heard from the speakers today, it appears that the board should provide updated and more comprehensive guidance on the veterans organization's exemption based on the many uses of their properties for veterans and charitable purposes. And let me turn to my co-chair, Ms. Lieber, and see if she has any comments on this.
Well, just my compliments to everyone who has participated and lent us their input and their experiences, and to my fellow board members and to our staff who are working through these issues every day. Thank you so much. This has been an educational experience, I think, for each of us. And I'm hopeful that the work in this area will continue. I think there's a long ways that we can go. Most likely working with the legislature as well to try to affect some policy changes. But we've made a very good start here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was very educational, and I think we've got a lot of information and a direction in terms of where we can go, and an opportunity to provide relief for veterans. So thank you for all of your effort.
Tony,
Member Shaver, go ahead.
yeah, well, coming from a very veteran-heavy area, San Diego County, I very much appreciate the program today, and it's highlighted how much work we need to do for veterans exemptions and veterans disabled exemptions so that we can be said to be one of the best places for veterans to live and prosper when they're finished with their federal service. And I'm also very impressed to learn more about the VFW halls and that great organization, and I want them to know that anything we can do to help them, all they have to do is ask. Thank you.
Deputy Controller.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to recognize the co-chair, Ms. Lieber, as well, for your leadership here and bringing all these veteran organizations together. I thought it was a great dialogue today, great discussions. I appreciate a lot of the veterans sharing their personal stories and their willingness to continue to do the work that's needed to be done in the community, and also too just a point that California does have the largest veterans population in the country, so we're doing this for a very good reason, and we just want to make sure that veterans who want to call California home have the opportunity and the full ability to stay here, continue to thrive in the Golden State, and I'm really, really looking forward to the work ahead. Thank you.
No, thank you all. I was a little embarrassed, by some of the testimony we heard, that I don't think we're doing enough for these folks. You think about, these folks go to war for us and protect us from our, for the lifestyle we have and the freedom, and yet they come back as veterans and, we really treat them like second-rate citizens. And with that, I'm going to take a stab at a motion to try to get something moving forward, and then see if there's other suggestions from the members here. I'd like to move and that we recommend that the board direct our executive director to develop and provide a draft, updated and comprehensive guidance on the veterans organization's exemption under section 215.1 to the board and this work group as expeditiously as possible.
I second.
Chairman Vasquez, pursuant to your policy, motions are supposed to be done in the board meeting venue as opposed to the work group. So if you'd like to hold that thought
Can
until...
we just do it like a consensus, and then I guess we bring it to the...
If you'd like to make sure you have a consensus for the motion, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
just wanted to remind you that the formal motion has to be in the venue of the board meeting.
That works.
Thank you.
So, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I was partially listening, so if I'm mistaken, let me know. But this recommendation that you're proposing, is it the same or similar to what Vice Chair Lieber did earlier?
Well, let me ask.
I think it would be. I didn't specifically call it out as 215.1, but I think it's very similar in that regard. And so the executive director is going to come back with the interpretation that would allow the most inclusive exempt uses of the veterans organization's physical property.
Ms. Lieber, would you like me to read that back from earlier today, the motion from earlier today?
Sure, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Now, let me find it. Where we put it.
And I guess I'll look to you, Henry, to see if we need to include section 215.1. Maybe that's all it needs, I don't know.
If I'm remembering the motion correctly, I think it's already included.
Is it?
Not
Okay.
specifically, but it's general.
Is it understood, I guess?
Yeah, I think that was understood, but I'll have, just to be sure, we'll have Kathy reread the motion.
Just a minute, I'm trying to find where I transmitted it to our team here.
It's been a long day.
We could just maybe edit that code into the original motion.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
I also have it in a written form here. I don't
Do you
know
wanna
that
read
I stuck to my notes completely, but I'll give it a stab. And it was that we request the executive director to work with BoE legal and property tax staff to review state and federal laws, cases, and regulations regarding nonprofit veteran-serving organizations to determine the most inclusive interpretation of the California Veterans Property Tax exemption that would allow veteran-serving organizations to achieve their missions with a minimum of restrictions. And I think that in the conversation that we had earlier, we might have attached a little bit more on the end there, but it sounds like, Mr. Chair, if I'm understanding what you're proposing, it would be to also develop that into a form that could be communicated to the assessors and to the veteran-serving organizations themselves.
Exactly.
So we could.
Is
we
that
could-
understood?
That's part of that original motion, so it's all included in that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
I'm
that
good
should be
if
fine.
that's understood. I'm
Yeah,
good.
correct. I believe everything is covered in that. That's a pretty broad-ranging motion, so we will make sure we cover everything we need to. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. And with that, there's no other items, right?
For this board work group, we've concluded all the items.
So we could officially adjourn the work group, then we go back to the board to adjourn that, right?
Well, we have some work to do in the board meeting. We have 2 more items left.
That's what I was gonna
But yes,
ask.
we'll adjourn if you adjourn this meeting and we'll start the next one.
Yeah, let me just, I guess, once again, thank all the assessors, especially that if they're still on the line, for taking the time and from their busy schedules to participate, as well as our BOE staff and the members here. And with that, I guess we will conclude this work group meeting at, I guess, 3:49, and now reconvene as the board, right?
Yep.
So then we will go from Ms. Taylor to back to Ms. Cicchetti. Our musical chairs here.
Musical chairs, yes. To you also. Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Alrighty. Thank you. So we need to take a moment now to actually convene the board meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah.
So, well, we'll officially convene the board meeting at 3:50. And with that, I will call it back to order, and let me get Ms. Cicchetti to
All righty.
give us our next, I think we have a couple items still.
We have a couple items left over from before. So
From
we're
before.
still in the executive director's report, so we're up to item number 16, which is the property tax deputy director's report. Report on the status of pending and upcoming projects, activities, and developmental issues, including letters to assessors, appraisal, training and certification, and state assessed property. These items will be presented by Mr. Young and his team.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable board members. Once again, David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department, for the record. I have for you today 3 reports. The first 2 will be presented by Ms. Carolyn Steemans. She is one of our new, relatively new supervisors in our County Assessed Properties Division, and I believe this is the first time presenting before the board. So without any further ado, I will let her do the first 2, the letters to assessors and the training and certification reports, and I'll follow up with the last one for the State Assessed Properties Division.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable board members. Today I will provide you with a brief report on letters to assessors. So attached to this month's agenda is a memo on letters to assessors, which provides a list of the LTAs that have been issued since our last board meeting. In addition, the memo includes a link to the BOE's website, where a list of all LTAs can be found that have been issued to date. As of the date of the attached memo, BOE staff has issued a total of 29 LTAs for the calendar year 2023. Since our last board meeting, 6 of those LTAs have been issued and are summarized as follows. There were 3 LTAs to issue for the 2024-25 income levels for leased property used exclusively for low-income rental housing, tribal housing exemption, and the welfare exemption. An LTA to issue taxpayer rights advocate office information sheets on property tax savings, one for the homeowner's exclusion, the other for the disabled veterans exemption. An LTA listing the state assessees, and the last was an LTA announcing the annual meeting of the State Board of Equalization and county assessors. And that concludes the report on letters to assessors, and we can answer any of your questions.
I have a question, but I'll wait for your presentation, because are you also going to be referring or getting into the LTAs as well, or no?
I will not.
Then let me ask a real quick question on the LTA, I guess number 2023/026, which refers to the 2024-25 income levels for the welfare exemption. We give assessors the income levels they should use for applying the welfare exemption to certain rental housing. We list the low-income limits at 80% AMI. In attachment B, the moderate income limits goes up to 140 AMI in attachment A, and we have the limits for over-income tenants who started out in low and got up to the moderate in the attachment C. Can you clarify when the moderate and over-income limits are permissible?
I'd be more than happy.
I figured you would handle it, see?
I'd be more than happy to explain. So for under welfare exemption, under 214, the income limit is 80% of area median income.
Right.
That's the standard baseline. Right now, there are 2 exceptions where you can go above that 80% baseline. One of them is for one of them is for CLT property. So if the property is a rental property owned and run by a community land trust property, they can go up to 140%. And the other one is, if I'm not mistaken, it's property that is built with tax credits, with federal tax credits. There is a provision in federal law that says if a tenant moves in and qualifies initially and then later on works hard and is able to basically raise their income, they can go up to 140% without being basically displaced from their subsidized housing. They sought California statute change in order to make it conform to the federal requirements. So if the feds can't displace you, they said it would be unfair to remove somebody's exemption because the operator of that project can't displace that person, yet they lose their exemption. So the legislature agreed with it and passed legislation. So in that instance, for tax credit properties, development tax credits, you can go up to 140%. And then for CLT properties, they also sought the same increase in the AMI. They also got it. So in general, 80% for everybody. Tax credit folks, 140%. CLT folks, 140%.
As long as they started at the low
yeah,
income at
as
one
long
point,
as you start in
and
the
they
beginning.
graduated up.
Yeah, and you.
Yeah, I
move-
was
and you
wondering
move up.
about that, because I think you might have mentioned that before, that it applies to rental and land trust
Yes.
properties.
Right.
But I wasn't sure if it also affected HUD, basically the federal HUD properties, right?
Well, the HUD properties they're a little bit different.
There are different AMI on those?
No, well, in general, if there is no tax credit involved, it's 80%. So
Right.
HUD finances a lot of properties, not all of them with tax credits. So it just depends on how they structure their financing. But for tax credit ones, they can go up to 140%.
Okay, I think you answered my question.
Okay.
Didn't want to put you on the spot on your first day here, but,
Okay, if there are no other questions, we can move on to the appraisal training and certification program.
yes.
Okay, so for the 2023-24 fiscal year, we've scheduled 34 classes. In addition, we've scheduled 3 workshops, one for mineral properties, one for geothermal properties, and the last one for taxable possessory interests. Since the last board meeting, we've taught 5 classes. We also continue to offer our existing online basic training courses available through American River College and California State University, Sacramento, as well as our online courses and self-study training sessions available on the BoE website. And that will conclude the report on training and certification, and we can answer your questions.
Okay, let me ask this one again. Since training was part of the work group discussion yesterday, what can we do to make our online training page more prominent so that it is easy to see for anyone looking into getting training and certification?
Of course. We already have a page dedicated to training, but we can always look for improvements. I will work with Mr. Kim, our communications officer, in making any adjustments, any enhancements that would make it a little bit more evident. The great thing is the folks that are looking for this training, usually they don't look for it until they're already certified. So they're basically on a hunt for it. So they're not really searching for something that they may happen to find. They're usually looking for it because they need it. But we will take a look and see where we can enhance our website, our page, and just make it a little bit more evident, a little more obvious. Yeah, easier to identify.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
And I see Peter Kim out there excited and anxious to work with you on this.
Can't wait.
Seeing no other comments or questions, who's that? Are you done, or now it goes to Mr.?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Then I will go ahead and give the last presentation. It's for the State Assessed Properties Division. So right now, staff has, with the board's adoption of the board role last month, what they've shifted their attention to basically is their audits. So every year, the State Assessed Properties Division selects state assessees to review their financial statements, their books and records, which we depended on in order to make basically the evaluations every year. So on average, there's about 2,000 or so assessees that we go ahead and audit. Right now, they're right in the middle of it. Most of the traveling's been done already. They've collected their information, they're doing their analysis, and they're writing up the reports. So with that, the goal is to have the reports reviewed, sent back to the state assessees for their comment and input. And the goal is to, by the end of this year and beginning of next year, as we have findings of either escaped assessments or refunds, to bring it back before the board for board action and adoption. The other thing that is taking up a lot of the State Assessed Properties Division's time right now is the assessment appeals. With the board's action earlier yesterday, we've adopted 14 appeals. We have 10 more to go. We have 24 filed that were active and valid this year. So we've gotten a lot of it done, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So when I first started with the State Assessed Properties Division, one of my superiors, my mentor, told me, just because you have half the number done doesn't mean you have half the work done. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Staff is working very diligently on doing the write-ups, the analysis for that. Of course, we're trying to bring that back to the board before December in order for the board to take action on the remaining 10 appeals. And the very last thing that the board is, the State Assessed Properties Division is working on is the PRC, the Private Railroad Car Roll. That was also adopted last month. With that, the board staff now goes ahead and basically prepares the billing and mailing, and all that is to go out by October. So that is, as you recall, that's a fully integrated program for the board. We do the discovery, the assessment, the billing, and the collections of the private railroad car tax. So that should cover what State Assessed Properties Division is doing for this month. I'm available for any questions you may have.
So it sounds like you're pinch hitting for Mr. McCool?
I am that, sir. He had another pre-scheduled.
But kudos to him and your staff and
Thank
his
you.
staff, because I know, like you mentioned, just resolving a lot of these appeals is huge. And I know you still have some more to go, but just wanted to commend you because then that it frees up the appeals that possibly would come to us.
Thank you. I will pass on those kind words to the staff. It does mean a lot to them, and you are absolutely right. Getting these 14 done early gives us an opportunity to really focus in and take a good look at the issues raised by the remaining 10. So,
Appreciate it.
of course.
Seeing no other hands or comments, I think we're good.
Thank you.
That wasn't too bad, was it?
She waited 2 days for 5 minutes. Are you ready
Ms.
for the?
Chetty, what's
Yeah,
next?
next item is item 17, Legislative Research and Statistic Division Chief's Report. Update on administrative and program-related legislative bills impacting BOE. This item will be presented by Mr. Angelo.
Welcome. I know you've been sitting back there just dying to come up, right?
Good afternoon, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I think I'm getting a little payback for having the last name starting with an A my whole life, so I guess I deserve it. I used to get to go first all the time. Not anymore.
I feel your pain. I'm a V.
So I'm getting the payback. For the record, I'm Ted Angelo, Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. Today, I'm going to provide a brief summary of the bills we're following that could impact the BOE's tax programs or administration. Some of them we've talked about today. As you'll note, we're tracking 3 constitutional amendments and approximately 25 bills that could affect our tax programs. First, I'm going to highlight a few upcoming legislative deadlines. The legislature returned from summer recess on August 14th and is currently hearing bills in its fiscal committees and on the floor. The fiscal committee deadline is September 1, so that's this coming Friday, and that's so all bills referred to the suspense file, and there's a number of them in the hundreds, high hundreds, will be taken up prior to that date. So Friday, I believe the Assembly and the Senate Appropriations Committees will be hearing the suspense file hearings. The last day to hear bills on the floor is September 14th, at which time the legislature will be in interim recess for the 2023-24 legislative session and will not reconvene until January 3rd of next year. So end of session really is September 14th unless they finish early for some reason. This week, one board member supported bill was sent to the governor for his consideration, SB 20 by Senator Susan Rubio. This bill is intended to help joint powers authorities further promote low-income housing projects via regional housing trusts to help fund and facilitate the planning and construction of these projects. So that was something that I had sent out to you as a copy of the letter coming from the elected board members in support of that measure to the governor. Elsewhere, we continue to track the board-sponsored legislative proposals approved by the board in November of last year and April of 2023, which are included in committee bills, omnibus measures for BOE and CDTFA, SB 889 and SB 890. SB 890 makes technical changes, clarifying changes made by Prop 19 that we've been talking about today, and SB 539 to amend Revenue and Taxation Code to include references relating to intergenerational transfer exclusions and the age 55 and older disabled disaster base year value transfer. This measure recently moved to the Assembly floor out of the Appropriations Committee on consent. SB 889 makes technical changes affecting the alcoholic beverage tax to increase the efficiency and administration of the program concerning the authorization of electronic service of levies and amendment of the RTC code to require any determinations or cancellations that are in excess of $50,000 to be made public for 10 days after the effective date of the determination or cancellation. This measure right now is on the suspense file in Assembly Appropriations Committee. Again, the board's bill analyses and amended analyses as needed for all active bills are posted on our website. I continue to send weekly updates with all of the bills that we've been tracking. This concludes my general legislative update. I do have a few other items that I'm going to touch on, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this point.
Let me just bring out a couple. You might be touching on these, but first of all, thank you for your updates. And I'm really interested in knowing the exactly where we are with a couple of the bills that we supported, specifically ACA 6, which is the Archuleta, and SB 726 on these bills related to the veterans homeowners exemption.
Okay.
And then I guess let me list just two others, then I'll let you.
Sure.
And SB 588, which is Senator Allen's removing the 20 million cap on nonprofit low-income housing. And then SB 734, the other Rubio, codifying the board's opinion on low-income rental units in government-owned properties.
So those particular four measures, so SCA 6 is the Archuleta bill.
Right.
And that bill is on suspense
Oh,
in Assembly Appropriations, so there'll be action taken on that on Friday. And SB 726 is a 2-year bill. It was held in Assembly Rev and Tax. So that bill can't have action until next year.
next year.
SB 588 is also a 2-year bill. And SB 734 is on suspense in Assembly Appropriations. So that's where those four particular measures are right now. The other items, do you have any others that you needed to touch on?
Those are the key ones that I
Okay.
was really, because those are the ones that that came before us and we
Right.
or endorsed.
And I touched on SB 20,
You
which
did.
is the one we sent to the governor's
Yeah.
support. One item that I wanted to touch on is the Prop 19 partial rollback issue was cleared. The initiative was cleared for circulation on August 21st. So that bill must receive 874,000 plus signatures by February 20th of 2024 in order to qualify.
For the November ballot in
Yes.
24.
So that's a recent development that happened on August 21st, the clearance for circulation.
Question if I could.
Sure.
Who's supporting that? Who is the?
That was
who's
submitted
gathering
from
the
Howard
signature?
Jarvis Taxpayers.
Howard Jarvis.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Not Howard Jarvis himself, obviously, but
But the
But
committee.
the taxpayers.
The association.
or Paul Gann for that matter.
And what's that?
I'm
the
showing
measure
my
called?
age.
What's the measure and the number? Is there a proposition number? It's probably not assigned yet, right? Until-
It has a tracking number. I don't have that with
Okay.
me.
That's
But
fine.
they're all listed on the Department of Justice Attorney General's website. But I can send that to you.
And how many signatures do they?
874,000, and I don't have the hundreds listed on my page here, but there's
No, that's
about
fine.
500 additional to 874,000. It's
By
kind of a
February-
convoluted,
February of 24.
by February 20th of 2024.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned earlier that SB 588 Allen bill is a 2-year bill, and you mentioned one other one was a 2-year bill. What was the other one was a 2-year bill?
It's SB 726.
26. Oh, okay.
So, and then from a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's about 15 bills that are either on suspense or moving to the floor in general. So I have a list of those. But the ones that we covered today are the ones that you were interested in the
Yes.
board support. And then just another news item, just a few days ago, there's a transition. We already have a new speaker, but there's going to be a transition from the current pro tem of the Senate, Senator Atkins, to Senator McGuire. The timeframe hasn't been completely hashed out yet, but they're doing a succession plan for the
I
next
heard it's
pro tem.
April.
That's what they're saying.
And
But
then he's out in December, so that's going to be another transition.
I thought he had 2 years, but
Yeah, he's termed out.
wow.
Wow.
Well, you got
So
me.
I think it's just a holding pattern at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard it was a real mess on the floor yesterday.
Yeah.
But,
They usually are.
well, this one, I think, kind of blindsided folks.
So that's all I have for now, unless you have any other questions.
Yeah, I think Member Schaefer has one for you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. I see AC 11 was postponed instead of killed. Do you know what it would be postponed to, or is that just ambiguous?
That's another way of saying it's a 2-year bill, if it's in a policy committee. If the hearing is postponed and it misses the deadline for committees to report bills to the fiscal committees, like the policy committee deadline, that means it's a 2-year bill.
Okay.
Since it's a 2-year session and we're in the first year of the 2-year session. So if the hearing is postponed and the bill wasn't taken up in policy committee, it's a 2-year bill. If it's in the fiscal committee, they have until Friday to reschedule it and hear it.
I see. I noticed in your letter here, you spell cancellations 2 different ways. I mean, is there any significance to that, or?
I was trying to appease the British audience.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'll work on that, I'm sorry.
There's the British way. And I assume that all the determinations or cancellations are all public information. I hear you want to make it public for 10 days only, and once you make something public, how can it be made private again? It's forever public.
Oh, the board proposal?
Yes.
That was a technical cleanup where it has to be after the effective date of the determination. So that was something that was agreed upon, was a technical change that was needed. So
I want you to know.
I can't opine on that one.
Yeah, I just want you to know I read it. Thank you.
And I will say one editorial comment, that a lot of the heat that the board takes are for laws that were enacted and that we have to follow, and the assessors as well, and DMV for that matter, and others that have to follow rules that people don't like. So
That's true.
just a note. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cicchetti, what's next?
The last item for the day is closing remarks and adjournment.
All right. I will start, and I'm sure there's other folks that will weigh in. First, I'd like to acknowledge our upcoming holiday, Labor Day, on Monday, September 4th. This holiday celebrates the social and economic achievements of American workers. Labor Day became a national holiday in 1894 when President Grover Cleveland signed a law that designated the first Monday in September as a holiday for workers. Today, we often celebrate Labor Day with picnics, barbecues, sports events, and street parades. And I wish everyone a happy and healthy and safe holiday weekend. Next, please join me in congratulating the 2023 Little League World Champions in my district, El Segundo, my hometown. Actually, not my hometown, but actually I had the honor, because I have a great nephew that played with many of these young folks. He's only 10, so he wasn't able to compete in this one, but hopefully next year, if they do a repeat, he may be there. This is, they actually well, first of all, they lost the first game, so they put them in the losers bracket. So they literally had to win 5 straight games at this competitive level, and they went up against one of the top teams, the international team, which was Curaçao. To get there is just a huge feat for these folks. And I know they're going to have a huge celebration down in El Segundo, so if anybody's in the area, you're welcome to join in. And these are the 12-year-olds and under, if anybody caught that. And finally, I would like to close this meeting in memory of all the lives lost due to the Maui wildfires and the victims of these rash shootings that have occurred recently across the nation here. And with that, let me see if there's any other, Deputy Controller.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to thank you and all my colleagues here on a very productive 2 days. I believe this board is headed in the right direction, making a lot of incredible progress. I also want to wish everyone the school year starting back up, and want to wish all students and teachers and faculty and staff an amazing 2023-2024 school year. And I bring this up too, as the Board of Equalization, we are one of the biggest revenue generators in the state of California, which in turn helps our public schools. So to all those new textbooks and supplies, I hope it's well used and well put together. And then also too, just on a more somber note, on behalf of the Controller, she sends her thoughts and heartfelt sympathies with the families and friends and CAL FIRE colleagues of three of our heroes who perished in a mid-air collision on August 7th, 2023, while fighting the Broadway fire in Riverside County. And just for the record, I want to say their names: Assistant Chief Josh Bischoff, age 46, Fire Captain Tim Rodriguez, age 44, and helicopter pilot Tony Suiza, age 55. And just a reminder, as these wildfires have intensified, we evacuate, but these heroes, they go straight towards the fire. They try to put it out and try to save lives. And it goes back to Vice Chair Lieber's point too. As the climate is changing, we've seen these fires intensify more and more, and I think we need to find some type of solution in order to get this all calm. And just want to pay tribute to those heroes, and I send my best thoughts to their families through this grieving period. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. And my Vice Chair Lieber, I think, has some closing
Thank you,
remarks.
Mr. Chair. Well, this has been a very beneficial 2 days of hearings. I thank staff for hanging in there with us and working our way through these issues. And in terms of climate and wildfires and the adjacent issues, I'd like to bring that back in October. So more about that to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think great hearing in terms of the workforce issue and also the veterans issue. I think both workshops are very comprehensive and helpful and give us a launching pad to march forward on. I hope everybody has a great Labor Day. And yes, we want to recognize labor, all the people that provide the benefits for us on a daily basis. It's so important. And praying for those who were lost at CAL FIRE, and also that we don't have another massive wildfire in California. That's the last thing we need. We're already in a crisis with the insurance industry. People are struggling there. It's affecting our economy in terms of people's ability to buy a home even. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to reach resolution there and get through this year without any large catastrophic losses. We're fortunate that LA, well, it had massive flooding. It wasn't as bad as it could have been.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm amazed that there were no deaths.
I know. I was getting these emails and calls, and even my wife was saying, we got to bunker now. We got to put up our plywood on our windows. And I said, it's not going to be that bad. Luckily, it wasn't. I guess I should knock on wood. But
yeah, they did a good job getting the information out.
They
warning
did.
People, which
and actually, I think we kind of over-prepared, which is probably better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Great. Thank you.
No, thank you. And actually, as everybody mentioned here, Labor Day, it's kind of ironic. Here we are celebrating Labor Day, and we have some huge strikes still going on, with especially the folks in the movie industry. My daughter was finally starting kicking off on her little camera work, and now everything's shut down. So feel for those folks as we celebrate Labor Day to think about them as well. And the hotel workers I know are going, many of them are going through renegotiations, so hopefully that gets worked out soon. With that, we will officially adjourn this meeting at 4:22 and then reconvene on September 26th and 27th.
26th,
Thank you all.
27th, yep.
Safe
2 days.
travels.
Another.